Hello, hi, salutations. Welcome to the Tetracast, episode 365, recording on September 21st, 2024. It's the day before my birthday, yours truly.
Happy birthday!
I'm only getting younger, as they say. This week we have, in terms of games we're talking about, not many new releases in terms of RPGs. I think both of these aren't even technically out yet, and one of them is only an RPG. And then as for news, it's like we had quite a bit of previews this week, and some really interesting announcements and updates that came out this week. But we are here just a week before TGS. We'll talk about that next week. In the meantime, we have almost, like over half of our usual crew, I guess is technically right. I have Adam Vitali with me,
Hello.
and I have Chow Min Woo.
Hello.
And as you know, I am Josh Torres, and I am your substitute host. Brian is not here. He'll be back. We're doing a switcheroo next week. Brian will be back next week, but Adam will be out for the following 2 weeks after this episode.
And James is already in Tokyo for Tokyo
Yes.
Game Show, and he's just taking a
So
vacation.
jealous. He's got that.
And then
Guy no Kiseki limited edition that they canceled my pre-order about.
We'll be running on a skeleton crew for a bit as people, switch it up. We'll be here, we'll be not here. So, we're gonna make sure that you're informed nonetheless. We'll see how that goes. In the meantime, Adam, you did a review for a game that's oddly, so it's not out yet in the West. It's been out in Japan for quite some time. We are talking about the action RPG Reynatis. This is another game by our favorite developers, Furyu. Kind of got a bit of traction because it looked like it very much resembles like the Final Fantasy Versus 13 project from back then. It had some interesting stuff with Shimomura. It is coming out in the West on the September 27th, but the embargo lifted like a day ago or so. Adam, talk to me about Reynatis.
right. So, if you are not familiar with Furyu is a Japanese company. They actually do a significant amount of like merchandise and types of sales, right, Chow? In terms of figures and
Yeah,
things.
they make a lot of figures, but their stuff is way more expensive than everyone else's. And you're wondering, do they justify the cost? But
anyways,
say no.
That's what I've heard. As far as Furyu's game projects go, this is how they normally work. Is while Furyu, as far as I understand it, does have like some in-house development capability, they usually outsource to other Japanese studios and collaborate with them in developing their games. For example, Reynatis, which is their most recent title, that was developed actually by Natsume Atari. Monarch, which is a previous title from Furyu, was developed by Landcars. I believe like Caligula Effect 2 was developed by Historia, and so on and so forth. So they outsource, they reach out to these smaller Japanese developers and collaborate with them to make games, usually RPGs. And as Josh said in introducing this section, Reynatis specifically, when it was announced, the main thing they kind of centered their announcement and their marketing on is the involvement of key creators that are well known for Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts. That is Kazushige Nojima and Yoko Shimomura, who most people who listen to this podcast are probably familiar with as a writer and a composer for those series. Now, this is a tactic that Furyu has used a lot when they in their game projects. For example, Monarch that I mentioned earlier, that one they basically touted all the involvement of like key figures from past Shin Megami Tensei games, especially in the older days of Shin Megami Tensei. The Caligula Effect, they brought on Tadashi Satomi, who is known for Persona 2. for The Alliance Alive, which is another Furyu game that released originally on 3DS several years ago. They had Yoshitaka Murayama, rest in peace, from the Suikoden series, who did the writing for that. But anyways, this is a tactic that they've used a lot, where they basically highlight the involvement of a key creator from a Japanese series or franchise that is relatively well known. However, Furyu's output has been less than stellar. I reviewed many of these games. I reviewed the Caligula Effect when it released on PlayStation Vita. I kind of detested that game. I never did end up replaying the remake of that, or the it's like the updated remakester version of that.
Calls it the overload effect.
Yeah, the overdose version, which they had like a new engine and whatnot.
I heard the overdose effect is an okay game, but I don't know. Okay is still not great, I guess.
Yeah,
I tried playing that game and I got bored, so I don't.
Yeah, the Alliance Alive. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say the only decent game I played from Furyu is Alliance Alive, and even I'd rather play a Saga game over that. So I don't know. Their input is not great.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The Alliance Alive seems to be like generally considered like the best game that they've made, but even so, I feel like it's only like okay or good versus like excellent. So, and Alliance Alive, like you said, it is kind of like a Saga-ish mechanics sort of game. But anyways, Reynatis is the latest adventure from Furyu. I will just kind of skip to the end here. I scored it a 4 out of 10, which is actually the same score I gave the Caligula Effect years and years ago. I don't think it's a very good game. Just jump back a little bit. I did review Cry Machina last year, which I felt was also like on the high end, but high end here being a 7 out of 10. So like bright spots in a maybe game that had a handful of issues anyway. But Reynatis, when I was reviewing this game and deciding what to score it, I kind of realized that I was pretty critical of almost every component of the game, from how it looks to its writing to its combat to like the subsystems that are quite thin. And I just kind of felt, man, this game has maybe underneath a lot of the flaws some like concepts that are okay, but a lot of the execution leaves a lot to be desired. First of all, the visuals. So a lot of the trailers for this game show off the like a CG pre-rendered sort of visual style in terms of like a cutscene or whatnot, and it looks decent. You know, it's definitely got a sort of Kingdom Hearts, The World Ends With You, or versus Final Fantasy 13 sort of vibe to it. It is set in Shibuya, Tokyo, so it's this modern day sort of setting. A lot of the game takes place at night, so it's got that sort of like dusk night sort of aesthetic to it. As far as the visual goes, the environment of Shibuya is actually pretty good, and in fact might be the best component of the game. Like if you were to chop up this game into its individual pieces, its individual ingredients, the Shibuya recreation is nice. And as far as I understand it, I've never been to Shibuya. It's actually a pretty faithfully recreation of it, like complete with real world businesses and whatnot represented in the game. On one of the street corners in the game is a Burger King. Like, oh, hell yeah, there's Burger King. Okay. Like it's not Burger King or some
knockoff, like
parody. It's like, no, it's just literally a Burger King right there. And that environment actually looks pretty nice. There's like advertisements, and it all the colors and that nightlife setting. It looks pretty good. But like character models do feel like 2 or 3 generations removed from other games, from contemporaries. In the very first cutscene of the game, it shows like close-ups of some of the characters' faces. Like when they're, I'll talk about the characters in a second, but just at that moment, I kind of like winced, like, this does not look very good. Like the character models in game are like, I kind of had to get myself in that mindset. Like, okay, feels like I've seen many people have made this comparison. Feels like a PlayStation 2 or a PlayStation Vita game, kind of that sort of, character design. Anyways, as for the characters, the game, Furyu kind of advertised the game as sort of a dual protagonist game. Let me get the character names here. There's Marin Kuruzumi, who is a college student. He's the male protagonist, and his goal is to be the strongest wizard, the most powerful wizard. More on that later. The other protagonist is Sari Nishijima, and she is a police officer. She is also a wizard or a witch, but she's part of like a magic task force of the of the police force that is basically meant to keep wizards in check. So the kind of premise of this game is that in this version of Shibuya, which is like an alternate modern day Shibuya, some people, just regular people, can gain magical abilities after going through like a near-death experience. It's kind of not really fully explained as to why. Well, it's sort of explained as to why this happens, but all you really need to know is that if you go through a near-death experience but are not killed, you might kind of revive with magic powers. But mages and wizards in this world are seen as dangerous, or seen as untrustful. So it's not it's one of those things that you don't flaunt it because you become like a target. And the game kind of has this whole kind of vibe to it where with modern social media and whatnot, like you can't be a mage anywhere because it's going to be captured and people are going to know. And that's kind of the dynamic that is established between these two characters. Marin, he's kind of a rogue wizard, and Sari, the police officer, is basically meant to track down rogue wizards. So there's this sort of antagonistic kind of dichotomy between these characters. I'll just say here, though, that Marin, the male character, is really the main character of this game. Not even halfway through the game, well, I should say before the halfway point, you kind of have two groups of three. There are other characters in this game. I'll be honest, I do not remember their names. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't remember the other four characters. There's four other characters. I do not remember their names. There's like a punch guy. There's an umbrella girl. There's a belt girl. Anyways, I don't know their names. But at the halfway point of this game, the two parties, there's two groups of three, coalesce into like a relatively standard 6-person JRPG team. But somewhat unfortunately, this sort of dual protagonist kind of setup kind of just falls by the wayside, and it pretty much just becomes Marin's story. And Sari's kind of little subplot, it's still there, but it kind of just becomes a subplot. So Marin wants to be the strongest wizard in the world. And really, this kind of premise is played completely straight. Marin wants to be the strongest wizard in the world. That's his driving, philosophy. That's all he wants.
Does he have a compelling reason? Like, you don't have to spoil the reason, but you don't.
Not
okay,
really.
Great. Okay.
And eventually, the other party members also want him to be the strongest, sort of just out of like support. And it's just played completely straight, and it's kind of boring. There's of course like some usual JRPG friendship magic that comes into play here, but and as you approach the end of the game, there are like world-altering stakes that do come into play, as you'd expect in most games, most RPGs, most JRPGs. But it's just not very interesting. And then
I always remember like sorry to cut you off. I always remember like the interview before this game came out. I mean, it was like translated by Nice America from a Famitsu interview about like when they talk about like the character design of Marin. They wanted him to look like the ultimate Chunibyo. Basically the ultimate like kind of almost like edgy sort of like design. And whenever I think about the design of that guy, I was like, yeah, I mean, it's definitely an edgy design they give him.
Now, the other character, Sari, the reason why she became a police officer, or one of the reasons why, is in this version of Shibuya, there's a drug epidemic. And the drug is known as rubrum, or colloquially the rub, and which I thought that was kind of that's not amusing. The rub. Like, do you have any of the rub? Anyways, so this drug, not only does it cause people to like be more dangerous and less reasonable, but it eventually turns them into monsters, and like. Part of Sari's like job task is literally just to like put them down like a diseased dog or something. Just like, you're a monster now. There's nothing we can do. Time to kill you. And I didn't touch on this too much in my review. I just called this like a shallow commentary on maybe drug enforcement, but other reviews I read for this game actually took a lot of issue with this, and I don't blame them. Where it's just kind of like, there's a nuance to talk about like drugs and enforcement and laws in society, but Reynatis' take on that is just anyone who takes a drug is a monster, needs to be killed. It's just kind of like, okay.
So that's and
And now it's like a magical drug that literally turns people into monsters in this case, but still, it's like if you're looking for. So one of my conclusions in my review is I don't think the story really lands because, one, this drug element is just played pretty shallow and straight, where it's just a problem that needs to be literally like amputated. But also, when I asked some questions to the development team of Reynatis, and I've seen this in other interviews elsewhere, they talk about this sort of societal norms theming where people cannot always like be themselves, because if they don't fit in with society, they're considered outcasts and they're not allowed to be themselves, and like challenging societal norms and things like that. And this ties into the combat system I'll get into in a second. But like, I'm playing through the game, and I put this in my review, I didn't see it. This narrative does not touch on this topic. It is not touched on this theming. Like Josh mentioned, that interview answer about Chaninbyo, or however you pronounce it, that's more what the game is about. Just like this main character, Marin, wants to be the strongest, and he wants to basically defeat people to prove that he's stronger. And there's a little bit more to it than that, but it's mostly that. And you learn as you play through the game like what Reynatis is. I think actually the latest trailer revealed it. It's a day that's coming that's sort of like a doomsday that basically is going to strip wizards of their power, which of course Marin doesn't want because he wants to be the strongest wizard. But like, and there's of course a villain that comes into play, and I won't get into all the details, but it's kind of a straightforward, boring story. Like there's nothing there. So visuals are kind of messy. Story is kind of boring. Characters are literally forgettable, and that I forgot half of them.
There's also like a World Ends With You collab also
yes.
with it too, right?
Okay. So about halfway through the game, there's a little portal that appears in like your base, and you click it, and it's just like, hey, what is this? And it takes you to an alternate version of Shibuya, and this alternate version, you run into Rindo and the hooded girl. What's her name? I forget.
Oh God, I forgot. Her.
Yeah, Shoka. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know those events in Final Fantasy 15 that were like crossover events? I think the Terra Battle one is probably the most similar. It just kind of feels like one of those where it's just like, hey, Rindo from The World Ends With You, or Neo, The World Ends With You. I'm Marin from, or this other character. Yeah, exactly. And you fight a handful of enemies that are basically lifted straight from Neo, The World Ends With You, and you even fight. I don't want to spoil it.
Okay.
You fight one of the bosses from Neo, The World Ends With You. But it takes about 45 minutes to complete. I mean, I don't know if anyone expected any different, but it's kind of like just this isolated, standalone segment that you do, and it takes about 45 minutes to complete. For what it's worth, the game itself is about 20 hours long. So if you were considering getting this game because of that crossover, no, it's less than an hour, and it's kind of divorced from the rest of the game. And that's it. It's just there's a couple of scenes, you fight a couple of enemies, you fight a boss. In terms of like the game itself, you do get one kind of additional skill for your characters to use once you complete it that you can use anywhere. So that's the only tie-in it has really to the rest of the game, is you gain a skill, which I'll talk about the combat in a minute here. But that's about it. And again, I don't know if people really expected much else. Like, I don't know what else you could do. Like, I didn't really expect it to like tie into the main plot. Like, literally,
they wanted to tie to Kingdom Hearts 4. That's what they want.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The spoiler was that boss is Yuzora. I'm joking. It wasn't Yuzora.
But okay, so graphics not great, story not great. The fan service collab is like short and kind of whatever. Surely the game's fun to play, right, Adam?
Okay. Okay, the combat in this game, and I think James even did a preview of this because he played a demo at NIS America's offices. It's an action RPG, and the main conceit to the game is sort of this mode switching mechanic. So there are two modes. There's liberation and suppression. And these are supposedly, ostensibly, tie into the game's like suppressed in your society or liberated in society, like when you're being true to yourself or whatever. But that's not that's all hogwash.
That's exactly how I act in society when I go
yeah Anyways, so suppression mode is basically your defensive mode. When you're into suppression mode, you cannot attack, but when an attack comes your way, you can dodge it. And by dodging it, what I mean is a little like mini QTE will show up. And if you hold a button in just the right way, like you hold it and you hold it for just a couple of moments, you'll dodge the attack. And when you dodge an attack, depending on how close you are to the enemy, you will gain a little bit of your MP back. Now, MP in this game functionally works like stamina does in a lot of action RPGs. So I might just call it stamina, but in the game it's called MP. So it's a meter that all your abilities sort of like cost, that they cost stamina to use. And, when you run out of stamina or MP, you cannot use any abilities, you have to refill it. So you dodge abilities, you gain MP. And once you've filled up your stamina or MP, then you go into liberation mode. So liberation mode is your active damage dealing mode. And in liberation, those QTEs that I mentioned, when you're dodging attacks, those do not show up. So this is maybe a little bit more standard that when an attack is about to hit you, it's just going to hit you. You can, of course, dodge it the normal way by getting out of the way. But unlike suppression mode, there's no like QTEs that you're pressing. So liberation mode, you're doing your damage, and that's when you can use your skills. And starting off, like early sections of this game, this sort of off and on cadence to the combat works okay. It's a little bit kind of weird, and I don't know if the implementation is great, because there are a handful of times where I ran out of MP, and when you're out of MP, you can't like do anything. And unlike other action games where your stamina, actually, I don't even remember if your stamina fills on its own or not. If it does, it's really, really slow. But the main way to gain stamina is to dodge abilities, to dodge attacks, like I said. So there were a handful of times I'm like fighting a few enemies that are not threatening at all. I'm like, oh, I'm out of stamina. I gotta wait. Okay, let me go into suppression mode. And all right, enemy, attack me, attack me, attack me, attack me. Dodge. All right, now I got some MP and I can attack you again. You kind of have to like wait a few moments to like get your MP to do an attack to like finish them off. And it kind of just sometimes takes a handful of seconds to do that. And it just kind of, you have to play very passively. And it's a little bit dull. I hope that makes sense. Like you have to kind of cater to the enemy's like attack pattern, dodge a few attacks, and then you're allowed to attack. It's
almost like, I guess the closest comparison that's easy to my mind is like Assassin's Creed 2, for example, where like the quote-unquote optimal way to like kind of get through combat was just the counters, like wait for people to attack, and then you just insta-kill them. Like in this case, obviously you waiting for an attack to dodge it to gain resources to basically blast them.
Right. Like imagine going through a Kingdom Hearts game, which this game, of course, kind of appears like Kingdom Hearts. And rather than just whacking your Keyblade all over the place, you kind of have to run up, stop, dodge an attack or two, and then attack. And like, I don't know, it's okay. It's just kind of dull.
Is it fun to at least like attack like whatever your combos or skills are?
Not really. And that's the other part of it, is that you really only have like one combo. I mean, there's like a few minor variances you can do, but it's really just like mash the attack button a bunch. And then you have two different attack skills that you can use. They're tied to like the X and the Y button on an Xbox controller, which is what I played with. And so like what your actual like attack patterns end up being is basically just regular attack, 10 times, and then do one of your skills once or twice. And then you have to regain stamina again, and then it's just kind of the same thing. Regular attack, and then do your skills like kind of cap off your combo. So it feels kind of a bit bush and mashy. It's just you wait for your stamina to fill a bit, then you just press the attack button a bunch and cap it off with one of your actual like attack abilities, and you get maybe 10 or so attack abilities you can use, but you can only equip 2 at a time. So it kind of makes things kind of feel repetitive. that every ability or every enemy you attack in the game is sort of approached in the same way. And so it's just kind of, you play for an hour or two and you kind of seen it. Like, oh, it's just this again and again and again. And the flip side of this is bosses. About halfway through the game, the bosses in this game become really, really chaotic. I kind of want to say bullet hell, but bullet hell makes it sound cooler than what it actually is. In that, like, you fight a boss, and this boss has like, they're like a big kind of golem monstrosity thing. Maybe they have like funnels, like Gundam funnels, right? Is that's what they're called? Little like,
Yeah.
There's like little like floating like satellite things that fly around and shoot lasers. And
basically.
so basically how this works is these bosses, there's one in particular that I'm thinking of, but many of the bosses in the game, they are just shooting attacks everywhere all the time from all directions, like lasers, shockwaves, punches, everything. And what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to like go into suppression mode and just like dodge. And when you can do that, it kind of looks cool, but the thing is, it's like never ending. It's just you're dodging these attacks all over the place. And remember, when you're in that suppression mode and you're dodging, you cannot deal damage. So I think the idea is that you're supposed to dodge attacks, look for an opening, switch to liberation mode, and then wail on the enemy. But the thing is it's like these battles get so chaotic and become like a visual mess of projectiles and colors and effects and whatnot that it just becomes mayhem. And what I ended up doing was like, it wasn't really worth it, and it wasn't really very effective or efficient to dodge all these attacks. Like, you're just kind of wasting time. And I should also mention, when you're dodging all these attacks, your MP fills up pretty fast. So you're not even like trying to fill up MP. You're just dodging because there's just so many attacks to dodge. And what I would end up doing is I would just switch to liberation mode, which is the attack mode, and just kind of wail on the boss. And while I'm wailing on the boss, since I can no longer dodge like the normal way, I'm just kind of eating some attacks here and there. I'm just kind of taking the damage. And then I would open the menu and just like down consumable items to keep up my health, and then I would just wail on the boss some more, and it just be kind of it was an effective method. It was just kind of messy and kind of annoying. And okay. I should also mention that there are attacks, I should have mentioned this earlier, when you're in that suppression mode, which is the dodge mode, there are some attacks that you cannot dodge. It's so like someone shoots a laser at you, if you're in suppression mode, the QTE will show up, and if you press it, you will dodge. If you don't press the QTE properly, like without proper timing, you won't dodge, obviously, and you'll get hit. But then there are other attacks that are purple in color. That's kind of the color scheme they use, that they will not have this QTE show up. So those attacks cannot be dodged no matter what. So you have to just get out of the way of those normally. So again, the idea is that you have to be careful, and you have to dodge the right attacks by, how do I put this? You see a laser coming at you. As long as it's blue, just stand in the way. Just stand there. The QT will pop up. You press it, you'll dodge. But if it's purple, you actually just need to get out of the way. So you kind of have to know, oh, this attack I need to get in the way of so I can use the QTE so I can dodge it. But this other attack I need to just get out of the way of. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
you need to know which types of attacks to dodge and which types of attacks to get out of the way. But
when you're like East 10, like when I was playing the Japanese version, like how there's like the blue attack and there's like a red attack. Like I believe the red attack you had to dodge it, and the blue attack you could dash through it or something.
I think it's the other way around. Well,
okay, yeah, but
red attacks in East 10, you have to use the guard
it, yeah, right. And then the blue attack you dash through it.
Yes. Now, for some enemies, this is fine, but again, for these bosses, when you have like lasers and shockwaves and punches and everything coming from all over the place, it becomes a mess of like knowing, like, I gotta get in the way of this ability, dodge out of the way of this ability and whatnot. And I know if you're listening to this, you might just be thinking, maybe you should just get good and dodge the attacks you're supposed to dodge and get out of the way of the attacks you're supposed to get out of the way of. But it's just like a mess. It's just like a mess, these boss battles. And like I said, at that point, I just sort of decided I'm just gonna wail on the boss. I'm gonna dodge what I can to fill up my MP when I need it, but just kind of wail on the boss, down consumables, and just, deal more damage than I'm taking damage. And most of the bosses in the back half of the game work like this. And I just don't. I feel like just the design is just not quite there. They're kind of chaotic. They're kind of messy, and maybe that's the point. But it's just not very fun. And I did read other reviews that had similar sentiments to this, so I know I'm not alone. It's just kind of. I feel like this game being so centered on this like mode switching dodge mechanics, the bosses are not quite suited for it. It's kind of strange.
I heard there's a really other strange mechanic in this game. I mean, I feel like this game kind of has like its whole set of like weird design decisions, but there's one that a friend pointed out when he was reading reviews to me that I read it. I was like, that's a really crazy thing to like do. So
What is this?
apparently it's again there's like a wanted mechanic.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, so it's like kind of like almost like GTA style. Like if you do stuff like if people see you do wizard powers, like so it's wizard powers like running fast or like getting into random encounters, they'll freak out, and then that'll get like you'll start racking up like a notorious meter as more and more law enforcement shows up because you're showing off wizard powers,
Get the bounty up.
Yeah, but the crazy part is like to get rid of this wanted level, all you have to do is like go to another area and it's like wiped completely clean. Even if you like fast travel to another area, it's like all gone immediately.
Yeah, so I mentioned this earlier that like this game kind of has like this social media component to it in like the world design, which of course it's set in the modern day. And so like if people know you're a wizard, even like some of the NPCs in the world will like get out their phones and be like, "It's a wizard. I'm taking a video of you right now." Or trying to. And so what you're supposed to do, like, is you're supposed to go run to like a dedicated hiding spot, and as long as you're in the spot, your little like notoriety meter will go down. But it's really just honestly much faster just to fast travel to another spot and then fast travel back if you need to. And that's pretty much all there is to it. And this is actually how I feel about a lot of like the supporting mechanics in the game. So not combat, but like supporting mechanics is that they're all just very thin. So like this whole notoriety mechanic where if you get caught doing magic abilities in the world, you just have to fast travel to another place and back, and that's kind of all there is to it. Like there's nothing else to say. I guess the only other thing to say is that if your notoriety goes up too high, basically a super boss like soldier will come to quell you, and eventually by like the end of the game you can beat him, but for the most of the game he's way too strong, so you have to avoid him. But again, it's just fast travel to another spot. Like that's all there is to it. And then another mechanic in the game that is just like really thin is graffiti shows up around Shibuya, and it kind of just shows up periodically as you go through the game. And when you examine the graffiti, it'll either raise your stats or give you another ability or perhaps power up an ability. But that's it. You just see a graffiti, you click it, and you're done. That's it. Like
okay, all right.
Yeah, it's like you click it and you're done. And then there are side quests in this game, but the side quests are also they're the type of side quests that are just like checklist side quests where it's like, oh, I saw someone using the rub over there and they're turning into a monster, and you go over there and you fight the monster, you return, and you're done. And there's a couple of side quests where you have to maybe talk to an NPC or pick up an item or what have you, but they're just like kind of these really quick, easy, simple side quests. So there's like, I know some people make the argument, and I don't entirely disagree, that sometimes it's just kind of comforting to have this sort of like easy check them off kind of side quest just to kind of like fill space or whatnot. They're not necessarily engaging or whatever. They're just, kind of there just, as almost like a filler. But that's what these side quests are. They're not like side stories. They're just like mini events. Pick up an item, fight an enemy, and get a reward. That's it. So basically, talking about the combat and these subsystems, combat is kind of either boring or tedious depending on the context, and these subsystems are all just really thin. Another component to the game that is also kind of aggravating is that in this world, there's the real world of Shibuya, and then there's sort of like this alternate world, and the alternate world is known as Another. That's what it is. That's the alternate world, is just another, like another world. And this world, almost always when you go to it, it's like this forest. And the forest sometimes has like a green fog or sometimes has like a reddish, purplish fog. But every time you go to another, it's the same goddamn forest. You go there like 10 times or more in the game. It's like a linear path, and it's got these little like spots on the map that are clearly like a battle arena where it's like, oh, I'm going down the linear one-way path. I'm entering a battle arena, so I know enemies are going to pop up and I have to fight them here. You go down the path, and you do this like a dozen times in the game. And it's just dull, like in terms of you just go to this place over and over and over again throughout the main story. So you're basically either fighting in Shibuya or in this like forest, and those are like the two locations in the game. There is like a deserty location that you go to a handful of times, but it's 2 or 3 locations in the game. Pretty much that's it.
So I have a different question for you. How long is this game? Does it feel, does the content overstay its welcome, where it's like, oh, thank God it's over. It's like
it's 20 hours, which is kind of in that thank God it's over realm. So it's not a long game. But yeah, like you go through these another areas, and also you go through these areas like I said 10 or 12 times in the main quest, and then like the side quests just bring you there again, and again, and it's just there's also a lack of enemy variety. You fight this golem thing a half dozen times. You fight this sword guy a half dozen times in terms of bosses. It just feels like a really cheap game in that regard in terms of like asset creation. So yeah, when I wrote up my review and then trying to decide what to score it, I was leaning towards a 5 out of 10 at first. I'm like, man, I've criticized practically every component of this game. I don't think any of it is necessarily broken, like this just doesn't work. And I didn't run into like any glitches necessarily. So I'm like, okay, it's a functional game that just doesn't land in any way. So I gave it a 4, which is I think the lowest score I've ever given. I've never given less than a 4. I know Josh has.
Oh yeah, I've given a 2. So
yeah. What was the 2? Was that Little Witch Academia?
Yeah,
it's a 3. I'm sorry, guys. I remember it was 3.
yeah.
You were unfair. You gave this 3 out of 10, a 2 out of 10. Anyways, so yeah,
I wonder what I would have been given this game if I got the reviews. I have no idea.
So like there are maybe some concepts in the story about like the magic of wizards and like this power and whatnot that is like maybe if you give it to a different writer, sorry Majima, it could maybe have done something interesting with it, but they don't. The combat, like again, it sort of works, but it's not very fun. The story, like, visuals.
Yeah. Obviously, these are different development companies on this, but it's just like something within the Furyu process. It's like consistent results of like mediocrity almost, or below mediocrity. It's like something happens in the process of these games coming out from the Furyu umbrella that's just like, oh, it didn't land the landing. It's like it seems like the components are like, okay, there might be something to it, but then somewhere in the process, execution wise, is like this is not great. It's kind of fucked.
Well, you gotta just kind of not look at them as a single creator. You gotta look at the whole team. Who the guys in the production, right?
I mean that's the thing, but it's like consistently like ranging from mediocrity to below mediocrity, like in terms of like Furyu output, right? It's like a pattern at this point.
Okay, now I know this is a audio podcast, but I'm gonna link part of a trailer in our chat room here, and it's timestamped, so hopefully it goes to the timestamp. And this is going to show the dodging during bosses that I mentioned. So just take a few seconds and just watch this. And this is how a lot of the bosses work. It's like you're just dodging all over the place, and it just kind of becomes a mess.
Yeah, so basically to the viewers, it's just basically the demo trailer for Reynatis, and it's just basically as you're dodging, there's a lot of like fucking split half-second freeze frames as you're dodging, so it like just breaks up the flow of combat. It's like split half-second freezes like every fucking second or so as you're dodging. So it just looks fucking jittery and stuttery. Not just like performance, but because that's the flow of combat as you're dodging.
Yeah, so that's how a lot of the bosses turn out, and it's just like I said, it's a mess. And like it sort of looks cool if you're able to like do all those dodges, but in another way, you're also not really being very effective because you're not doing any damage while you're doing this. So, and yeah, it's
Exactly.
just. And if you try to go into those, the thing to keep in mind is if you try to go into attack mode, none of those little QTEs will show up, and you're just going to eat that damage instead. So yeah, that's Reynatis. I keep playing these games because I keep hoping to find like a diamond in the rough, but I haven't found it yet. I'm still looking. Oddly enough, like the one Furyu game that I have not played is the Caligula Effect 2, which seems like it might be the best Furyu game, but that's the one I haven't played. I mean,
people will tell
relative.
you. Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know, man.
I was so burned by the original Caligula Effect, and not Overdose, but the original version, that I'm like, I don't want to touch this again.
Who can blame you? Do we know any other of Furyu's games after Reynatis?
They kind of do one game at a time. So like last year they had Trinity Trigger, which I don't think I've mentioned before. Now that was supposed to be like their Secret of Mana like, and that game I gave a 5 out of 10.
Was Furyu Cry Machina or not?
Oh yeah, that was last year too. So Trinity Trigger and Cry Machina were both last year. Cry Machina I gave a 7 out of 10, so that's like one of the better ones.
Okay, well,
like I felt Cry Machina had like some heartfelt story moments and some like decent combat, but a lot of other things were faltering on that one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
what's the funniest thing is like Gem Drops did like Crystar.
Yes.
I was kind of worried about their resume, but they cranked out like the Star Ocean 2 remake or whatever you want to call it, and you're like, damn, that's very good. You just wonder what went wrong here.
Yeah. Gem Drops I know has a booth at TGS, or they have like 3 games. I don't know if it's a booth or they just said they have like 3 games they're working on. I know I've seen some people say maybe they're doing another Star Ocean or whatnot, but I don't know if Square Enix has anything to do with this, because Gem Drops works for their studio for hire. Basically, they can work with any publisher. So we have no idea, but they're working on stuff. So to be clear, Gem Drops is the developer of Crystar, which is another Furyu game. They have nothing to do with Reynatis, but it's just one of those development companies that Furyu has worked with.
Natsume Atari's been busy.
Yeah, they did.
Natsume
Atari did. What did they do? They did.
They did the Ayuden spinoff, like
and they're doing the Penny Blood spinoff, which is out in early access. I have heard like nothing about it.
Are you worried about that game now after playing Reynatis? It's like, oh, we got a famous developer that worked on a famous franchise before, and now like
Natsume Atari also did. Go for it.
I guess I don't have like a stellar impression of Natsume Atari to begin with. Like I thought the Ayuden spinoff was, considering I reviewed it years ago, considering it was like a companion game spinoff for like $15 or whatever it was, like it was fine. But this Penny Blood spinoff, Penny Blood, like I'm a Shadow Hearts fan. I played all the Shadow Hearts games, and I played Kudelka a couple years ago, not even that long ago. I talked about it on this podcast. I'm interested in Penny
Chaos
Blood.
Wars?
I have not played Chaos Wars. What does that have to do with?
Well, it has the Shadow Hearts character featured in there as a.
Oh, I have no idea. Okay.
Natsume
Anyways,
Atari also recently released like the really highly praised. Oh wait, that was last year. The Ninja Saviors, Return of the Warriors side scroller, and the most recent one is the Shadow the Ninja Reborn, which has been getting a lot of.
Yeah, Natsume Atari does a lot of those side scrollers, so it's it is a little bit weird that this Reynatis game is there. It's because it's, when I think of Natsume Atari, I think of like 2D games generally, and Reynatis is definitely not. I don't know. I will play Penny Blood Hell. Is it Hellbound or Hellhound? I always forget. I think it's called Hellbound, but it features the Hellhounds. It's a spin-off prequel thing. We're way off topic, but that's okay. I will play that when it comes out of early access, probably.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing your time with Reynatis. That'll be available in the West on September 27th for PlayStation 5. I think PS4 also. I don't remember the platforms. PC. What's it on? Reynatis.
Yeah, I played it on PC.
PS5, PS4, Switch, and PC.
I wonder how the Switch version turned out.
So yeah, Reynatis. As for me, I haven't really been playing an art. Well, there's an RPG I'm playing that I can't talk about yet. Eventually, I'll be able to talk about it one day. In the meantime, I made some bad life decisions with friends last night. There's an open network test that opened up last night on Steam and then on other platforms as well. It's like fucking everywhere. They were testing out a crossplay on it. This is for hit game, upcoming game, Sword Art Online Fractured Daydream. Um, this is a bit of an odd one, and admittedly, like a bunch of friends and I gave it a shot just because it's for free. It's a free network test. We get to play together. What's it's a we all have bad nights.
Well, let's
So
step back a bit. So we
yeah.
have covered a lot of Sword Art Online games on our site because they are just RPGs set in that universe, which makes sense if you know anything about Sword Art Online. Well, I say we covered them, like we covered news and updates, but they could never find anyone who actually wants to review these games, so we don't really review them very much. This game, what is it called?
Fractured Daydream.
They all have similar names. Fractured Daydream. We actually were not kind of covering in like our traditional capacity because this game is not really billed as like an RPG like the other entries in previous years. It is more like a multiplayer MMO-ish combat game, right? And that's why they're doing like this network test. I actually saw someone playing this network test on Twitter. They were like, wow, this game feels like it was made kind of multiplayer as the focus. And I just kind of wanted to say, yeah, that's how they sold it. Like the first line in their press release was, this is a multiplayer game, like a multiplayer battle game. I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I'm just saying that it's a little different than their previous games.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of weird because this supports like up to 20 players in a session, and it's not like all 20 players at once, like in a big party. It's like 5 groups of a party of 4. That's how they split up this 20 player allotment in like a mission. And there's like 3 types of missions. The ones in the open network test for these co-op quests and these boss raids. So when you're connecting to like a session, you kind of sort of pick out like from a group of like SAO universe characters from all over the place. So they're like from the original light novels, from the anime, from some of them are like from later arcs, some of them from like spin-offs like Gun Gale Online spin-off. Um, there was and some other and like movie characters, I guess. And it's kind of funny because like as you're selecting your character in your party of 4, whether it's from your friends or like you're grouped up with other random people, the selection looks like you're picking out like a character from like Apex Legends almost, where like you see like a bar at the bottom as well, and you see other people's like who they're picking, and then you can also go check what the other parties character compositions are. But there's no like I don't think you can select duplicate characters in the same party, but if it's like for other parties, it's totally fine. So if there's like another Kirito in like party A and you're like party E, and you want to pick Kirito as well, you're like, okay, you can pick. But I don't think there could be like 2 Kiritos in party E, for example. Um, and they're all divided up into like roles to like fighters, tanks, rogues, rangers, mages, and supports, um, and so forth. So as everyone uh queues and then goes into the mission, like a co-op quest, for example, the co-op quest is pretty interesting because all 5 parties are separated from one another on a map, and they have to go do objectives on their own, like their own party. And then as they're completing objectives, eventually each of the 5 parties will coalesce together into like one big map objective where they have to like say um like disable a tower that's spawning monsters, and like the monsters are like all pretty high level. Um and you have to go protect the people, try to like, do tower progress as the monsters are spawning in and so forth. So it's like a big group effort. And I guess I should mention this right away is like this is also a really interesting game because it's like it's almost like a MOBA where like Dota 2 or like League of Legends, where it's like every time you connect to a new multiplayer mission session, your character always starts at level 1, and then you actually like level
Oh.
up throughout the mission. And then as you're leveling up, you start unlocking your skills, and you get the choice of like which are the 3 active skills you want to unlock first, and then second, and third, and so forth. Like a MOBA, where like a
Right,
MOBA you always
right.
start at level 1. When you get to reach a certain level, you pick which of the skills you want to unlock in an order.
Yeah, so these
Um,
sorts of like missions, they kind of have this sort of ramp up to them where you start off, level 1 basic abilities, and by the end of
yeah,
the level, everybody's powering up their characters, and you get more and
yeah,
more
everyone will get
devastating.
their ults, and yeah.
So,
So it's not there's no PvP element. It's only
mhm.
PvE. So after you um do this whole big mission of like, let's say they're restoring this tower's or disabling this tower from spawning monsters in, you eventually go do other stuff. Eventually you go through a portal to go beat up the big like boss of that co-op mission, which like this one is like there's like a big goblin of some sorts, like in like this like stuck in like these ruins. So everyone, goes through the boss room, and there's actually like mechanics you have to do. You have like to beat up these magic crystals first. There's monsters spawning in. There's also you have to worry about obviously the attack patterns of the boss. Um, and then as the mission goes on, and everyone's like kind of doing their part to whittle down its HP, there'll be sometimes throughout the fight like MMO boss mechanics where like there's a counter chance. So like there'll be like a blue and yellow circles that people have to like get into and activate and like to go form up a formation, and then depending on like how well they do, it could be like a counter, a perfect counter, or like they just fail it altogether. you know they'll either have like a chance to like um gain the upper hand. If they do a perfect counter, they'll like raise like the down gauge on the boss significantly. So like you'll eventually reach a state where like if you fill up the down gauge, that means it's time to attack because it'll be incapacitated for some time. Or like if they failed like the counter, for example, then everyone kind of eats shit and damage and so forth. So there's some involvement there. There's also like this whole chain mechanic between like all the 20 people participating in the fight as well, where everyone has to do their part. Where um, I'm not exactly sure what the trigger is, but there'll be like a QTE being passed around to other people to like go continue the chain. So like as you're beating up the boss, eventually at some point of the fight, you'll have like an R3 prompt um on your screen, like if you're on a controller, and then you got to press that R3 prompt in time before the circle depletes to kind of continue the chain. So eventually, if all 20 people do that chain together and they finish the chain together, then like that gives you another opening to like kind of beat up the boss and incapacitate it as well, and so forth. And then after you beat up the boss, you all gain the rewards. You appraise whatever you found, and then the things that can be looted is like equipment, like for example, new weapons for your character or other characters, um, accessories, and these like give like more attack, more defense, more like critical rate up, or like if you do elemental damage up, elemental resistances,
So
and
even
so forth. So
though you start at level 1 when you do a mission, you still get some like character setup beforehand that might adjust
yeah,
your utility and your capability.
yeah,
Okay.
you get to keep the equipment that you loot, but your levels always reset at the start of mission. So that's kind of like your persistent progression is the loot that you gain
Makes sense.
from a mission. Yeah, and you also have like all the stats of like, hey, how much damage did you deal? How much healing you did deal? How much revives did you do? It's like it's all ranked too. So you get to check who did the most damage, who's slacking, and so forth. And there's even like a fun like competitive mechanic where there's like you can have like an MVP party of like which party had like the most score, and then they'll get a little bit of more extra loot. And then there's also like a last hit mechanic on the boss where like it'll actually show like who dealt the final blow to the boss, and then it'll like zoom into their character uh, as they're finishing it up. Um,
So
That
does this
sounds
and then,
like
game does this game I don't know how it would, but does it like follow the story, or is it more like this game is set in this one arc where you fight this one character
There
or
seems to be
boss
like
or
a
villain.
story mode. So like I guess a recent trailer or whatever presentation showed that like there's a story mode. Like if you want to unlock all the characters, all the playable characters, you want to go through the story mode of that game, and then it'll be shown through like I guess the perspective of multiple characters. I imagine. I assume it's just like a big like the dimensional void is crossing over to other parts and times and whatever of the SAO universe. Or whatever. I don't really know the story setup,
Right.
but that's my guess. It's like because it's like pulling in from so many different arcs and so many different timelines and so many other series, you know. So I imagine it's kind of that setup. Um, but the long term thing about it is the multiplayer aspect of it
Yeah,
because
I was actually looking at the original press release for this game. This game was announced in February, and like this is literally like the very first words that they say about this game. Bandai Namco today announced Sword Art Online Fractured Daydream, the first large-scale multiplayer-focused adventure based on the popular SAO series. Set in the world of SAO, this title will focus on a multiplayer action experience. Registrations for the closed beta test are now open. So like first paragraph basically said multiplayer game. There's a closed beta
yeah,
test, so definitely
yeah,
not like that's not usually how you would introduce like a single player RPG. So,
yeah.
but hey, a
So
lot
it's
of popular games these days have that community multiplayer co-op-ish kind of experience. So I've seen some interest in this one from especially from fans. So
yeah, it's kind of it's very the scope of it is pretty large because it's like I forgot exactly all the platforms that it's coming out on. Let me go check real fast. But it's like
looks like all PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, and Steam.
yeah, so it's
So
like all platforms and it supports crossplay. So it's a pretty ambitious project. Like you're just trying to rope it as big of a population as possible. And it doesn't matter which platform you're on, you're always going to be able to connect each other. On there, obviously, there's like options if you want to disable crossplay and so forth. That what matchmaking region you want to be in. But they're trying to get everyone together pretty much. Um, there's also like there's like one co-op quest, and then there's like one boss raid like in the open network test. So like boss raid is like very similar. It's like except instead of like the whole going throughout the map, it just starts you at the boss, like this big boss right away that's like has a lot of fucking health, and your character still start at level 1, and the boss is like level 35. So obviously you all can't like immediately target the boss. Like there'll be ads that spawn at the beginning of the boss and throughout as you're doing boss mechanics and whittling out down the HP, and then you'll have opportunities to level up mid battle. And sure, it's kind of more chaotic, frenetic action because you're making decisions on the fly of like, what skills do I want, what temporary like because there's like I think they're called mods or some access or I forgot what they're called, but there's like pickups that you can have like temporary buffs on you just for that mission, and then those will go away. Like say, like one of them is like movement speed up 30% or attack speed or attack up 20%, but it's only for that fight you can only have like one of them at a time. But you're making those decisions on the fly in that fight too of like, hey, do I want to swap this out for this or do I want this? When you see it on the ground, so it's like a pretty interesting experience in terms of like like obviously anything's fun when you're playing with your friends. So we had a good time, relatively. But like the actual combat itself is kind of it's a little bit on the shallow side because you're kind of trying to serve all sorts of like roles, right?
right,
You're trying to have a battle system that supports like melee, and then but there's also you can also like have like play it like a third person shooter because some characters have guns, like Len from the GGO spinoff. She's like a little girl that like her main gimmick. She has like a submachine gun and she goes really fast. She's always on the move. Like she's the character that like I played the most of the open network test because not a lot of characters were in it. So it's like okay, I'll play that character and like it plays like a third person shooter. In that where a lot of your damage is just like hey you're emptying your P90 while you're firing off skills and you're reloading and trying to like make sure you're not getting hit, um, and so forth. And then there are other characters like from like the fairy or whatever arc from the original SAO that like can fly. They have flight capabilities. So like support characters like Lifa have like fairy wings and she's her main thing is like she's supporting the team with heals. She also can deal damage, but also she has the capability of flight as well. Um, then there's like other mage characters as well who can like fire off spells and so forth. Tank characters obviously get attention to themselves. So it like the combat system has to be flexible enough to like support these different modes of that define characters. But in the process, it kind of feels diluted in the sense that like
So do you
it.
ever have a session where you're just like they're all Kiritos and then it's like, oh, there's no playing support, we're fucked? Is there kind of like sessions like that for you?
I mean, yeah. I've been playing with friends, so like you have a balanced groups. I mean, obviously there'll be like I don't know what other parties are doing. I only care about what my party is doing, but obviously there's gonna be Kirito's a popular character, so you see a lot of Kiritos in the open network. So there's never been like there's never been a point where like, oh, I have a bad party comp, I'm fucked. I don't think that's necessarily the like, even if you have like say like a comp that doesn't have support, for example, you're not fucked because you can still, one, you have 3 consumable healing items that you can use, like kind of like heal yourself in a pinch, and 2, even if you fall down in battle, people can res you within a certain amount of time. But even if people don't res you, you're not out of the fight forever. You just respawn like after a short wait, and then you might have to like go run back to the area or so forth. So it's not like you're ever permanently out of the fight or anything. Um, so it's pretty like forgiving in that aspect too.
But
It's not.
there's
It's
like
not.
no restrictions, right? You could just kind of go in with any party you like, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
as far as I know. So I think it's like, I guess the best way to put it is like, if this game was like priced at like $20 to $25, I would give it a shot. Like, if there's like, I would actually seriously consider like getting it and like probably having a good time with it. But I don't think it's like $60 good. Just like the retail price of this game. It's not. I'm not like ready to like kind of go all in on. I think it's a fun time, especially if you have like-minded people or like-minded community to play it with, obviously. But in terms of like if I'm only gonna play with if there's like one other interested person or like if I'm the only one interested, there's no way I'm paying $60 for this. And it also does the whole pre-purchase to get 3 days early access thing. So you have like the cheapest tier that's like $85, and then there's like another tier that gives you a little bit more cosmetic stuff for like $100. And I'm just like, nah, nah.
What was
So
the
I
Sword
think I
Art
think
Online game that came out last year? There's so many games.
well,
Last
last
Recollection.
recollection.
I'm just
Yeah.
curious. Okay, so that's a $60 game.
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
you get the bundle that includes all the DLC by itself. If I'm reading this right, this is just the DLC. Am I reading this right? It's $85.
Jesus.
It's more expensive than the game.
So I,
Okay.
I believe how they're doing Fractured Daydream is like they're doing a whole there's a free updates are like actual content, like say like there's like new missions, new boss raids, new co-op quests. Those are like free updates, but then like the paid DLC updates are like new characters. So like if you want to get like Straya, for example, like as an upcoming character, but if you want to play her, you have to actually pay for her on that. But in terms of like content updates, I believe those are free for this game. I think they're doing like a whole live service, like there'll be a battle pass and I'm sure just be like daily logins or dailies or whatever. Um, so I think they're gonna go that route, as far as I know. So I think the concept is really cool and interesting. It is developed by Dimps, and we're gonna talk about Dimps in a little bit.
Speaking of
On the
dimps
news, yeah. But and they were the developers behind like SAO Fatal Bullet, and a lot of people who
and a bunch of
like
Sonic
SAO
games.
games, yeah, yeah, they seem to like Fatal Bullet a lot. So I don't know exactly like what other people think about this game. I think it's really needed concept, but I think the price the 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 price of admission, in my opinion, is like kind of high for this kind of game because it kind of really lives or die by like community, right? You can have like obviously computer AI for like there's vacancies in the group, but obviously what will make this game work is just like a healthy community and like asking to have a large healthy community in the modern landscape of gaming for a multiplayer game, be $60 from the get go is, I don't know, a little bit much. Um, if this game was like either priced like way down or like a free to play game, then I think this game would like really go far. Um, but I just don't know if the $60 price point in this day and age would really gel well. You do like the only people you're appealing to with that price point is like the diehard fans of SAO. I think on day one with that, and I'm not a diehard SAO fan. I think that game is okay, but not $60 okay. it's but it's but I'll commend them for like, hey, it's a really cool concept. It's and try to make everyone like operate and feel different.
How do you feel about this, Josh? Do you feel this is like a must play with multiplayer with friends? Without the multiplayer content, do you feel this game is kind of like
Probably not. Like if you're not playing this game for the multiplayer, then it's probably no point, right? I mean that like even Adam said the first line in their press release and the announcement of this game is like it's a multiplayer focused game. It's a multiplayer game.
Man, those
You're-
games sounds kind of a disaster because if you don't pay full price, then that's like when the game has peak player base, right? If you wait for a sale, all the players are gone. Now you don't have the multiplayer to play with, right? So it's like, ugh.
So yeah, I mean we'll see. I mean I was checking the Steam charts for this game. Obviously, the Steam charts of the numbers of this game are going to be a little, not diluted, but kind of not representative of the entire base because this is available on all platforms, and the open network test was on all platforms. So obviously, the console player base is a big factor into it. But like the peak player count of this on Steam was like over 9,000. It's like okay, that's actually a pretty decent like number of like just interested, curious people to like me who are like okay, I'll give it a shot because it's free right now. I don't know how many of those 9,000 and whatever number fraction of the console player base will feel like, oh, this is $60 good. I don't know how much I don't know how many people will stick around for that. But it's okay. It's okay.
I mean, for what it's worth, that Sword Art Online Last Recollection that came out last year, its peak player count was 1,800.
Yeah, it was. I heard it was like a big step back from the previous SAO game, which people generally seem to like if it clicked with them.
Oh, Alicization was about 9,000 also. That was the one
Yeah.
beforehand, I think. So,
Yeah, that's my brief you know dabbling to this new SAO Fractured Daydream game. It's the concept is cool. That price point is no. I don't think it's any good for this time era in video games. With that said, that's all we really have for right now. Fractured Daydream is coming out October 4, I want to say. Like, yeah, not that far away either. Um, so there were quite a bit of things on the site, including Adam's Reynatis review. Go check it out if you're interested in hearing more about it. As you said, you gave it a 4 out of 10. Um, it's sometimes games don't come out. Sometimes bad games come out. That's how it goes.
hey, this is a joke, but I reviewed like Paper Mario and Shin Megami Tensei, and those were both 9s. So I needed to come back down to earth.
Yeah,
So,
I'm always of the opinion that like every once in a while you kind of need to like play maybe like an interesting but like less stellar or less polished game to kind of regain some perspective.
yeah, you need to recalibrate.
Something that's interesting to you but not necessarily be like the most polished or widely acclaimed thing ever. There was a big demo that came out this week. Square Enix released a demo for Romancing Saga 2 Revenge of the Seven out on all the platforms that it's coming out on. It includes save data transfer to the full game. So you start at the beginning of the game, and then you basically, I believe the demo stops at like kind of where the prologue-ish section ends.
Yeah, I have not played this demo, but I played the original game, and I talked to Cullen, who is the one he played this demo, and he wrote up a preview for the demo, his impressions. We already talked about Josh's preview, that he wrote at PAX, which was more like in the middle of the game, certain scenarios that the game has. This preview being based off the demos from the very beginning of the game. And how this game works with that generation system, this is basically like the first generation. It's like kind of the kickoff of the game, of the story. And it apparently stops just before it basically like switches to the more, open-ended, travel the world, various scenarios can appear kind of structure that the game has. So it's kind of like everything up to that point. Mm-hmm. But Cullen came away very, very plussed about the demo. He labeled his little mini demo impressions here. Romancing Saga is going to ruin my life. So that's pretty high on it. He thinks this game is so good he's going to be spending a lot of time on it.
You also had an awesome interview with the producer Shinichi Tatsuke for Romancing Saga 2: Revenge of the Seven. Yeah, you want to just give us like kind of the highlights of that like live interview, I believe.
So
speak to him.
So in this field, in the work we do, we oftentimes get the chance to interview creators. Oftentimes, especially with Japanese creators, they're ad hoc interviews that are done through email, where it's like you send over questions and they send answers back. In terms of like efficiency, I get it, because it's easier to work with translation and time and whatnot if you do it that way. But oftentimes those sorts of interviews, like I actually did one for Reynatis before the game came out. Oftentimes the answers you get back are just kind of like boilerplate, copy paste from the press release sort of thing. And they're just not very interesting. Sometimes you ask a really deep question and they give you like a one sentence response.
Yeah.
Anyways, this is the opposite of that. Square Enix actually had us do Zoom interviews with the producer of the game, Shinichi Tatsuke, through an interpreter, of course. This game, for those who aren't aware, is being developed by Zine, and Zine is the developer behind other Square Enix games like Trials of Mana Remake, as well as Paranormasight, and other stuff as well. And this game here, Romancing Saga 2: Revenge of the Seven, is pretty much just the next project between Square Enix and Zine after Trials of Mana. It's in the same sort of concept, taking a Super Famicom classic RPG that was never localized, or at least not at the time. Both those games, both Trials of Mana and Romancing Saga 2, did get localized later. But anyways, taking that game and basically remaking it in 3D for a modern audience. Same producer. I actually did interview Shinichi Tatsuke for Trials of Mana at E3 5 years ago. And this is basically the next thing that production and development team is working on. And it was really nice to talk to him. And I asked him kind of, please read my interview. It's basically just, if you want to see what a producer, like just the approach to the game, coming off of Trials of Mana, what they wanted to do to like try to sell this to maybe a broader audience and whatnot. It's just good copy in terms of, the philosophies and the approach there. And that's one of the things they highlighted, was they're trying to, have this game be approachable to newcomers. But one of the things they really liked about Romancing Saga 2, and one of the reasons why they decided to remake it, was it is just a very unique, cool game. So it's kind of this mix of, we think this game is unique, different, not like other RPGs. So it's not just run of the mill, but also, they know that original game is a little bit obtuse, a little bit complex, and they wanted to maybe lighten that up a bit. So some of the approaches there, in terms of tutorials, in terms of difficulty modes and things like that. Just a really nice talk.
I really like your question about asking about how good is Kenji Ito.
What's actually kind of amusing is it was actually very obvious that Mr. Tatsuke, he didn't speak English, but he must understand English. If anyone who's learned another language, it's easier to kind of like receive it than to speak it. And so like when I asked a couple of my questions that I joked about, like when I asked like who is his favorite of the heroes and how good is Kenji Ito, he laughed right away. Because you could tell he understood the question, but of course he responded in Japanese and it was translated. His answer about Kenji Ito, I actually fully agree with. Kenji Ito is a legend, has been doing this for more than 3 decades. And Mr. Tatsuke's basically answer was, I feel like Mr. Ito is still in his prime. You know, some composers, it kind of feels like their best stuff was years ago. And they're just sort of, you know, coasting on, I don't know, legacy or whatnot now. But Ito still puts out great stuff. You know, the original soundtrack was good. They asked him to basically remaster it, rearrange it, plus a few new tracks. So he likes Kenji Ito a lot. A couple of questions he wasn't really able to answer. I was curious about New Game Plus. Stuff. Yeah. A lot of Saga games, modern Saga games or remasters, they oftentimes have like a New Game Plus system, which is not only good for repeat playthroughs, but it was actually sometimes just kind of nice to the way these games are structured to start over, but to not to start over from scratch. To like, hey, let me kind of take the progress I've made in terms of powering up my characters or my team, but like, let me just start over from the beginning and maybe try something different, play through a different way, part of the game, or go through different scenarios or whatnot, but have my characters already be powered up. And I was wondering, the Romancing Saga 2 remaster had this, but does the remake? Because they haven't said anything about it, but he said he can't answer it yet. So I'm not sure what that means.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I also asked him, one thing I was curious about was, so the previous game this team worked on and this producer worked on was a Mana game. And now they're working on a Saga game. And I basically asked him, do the other Saga producers at Square Enix, which are namely Akitoshi Kawazu, who's the creator of Saga, as well as Masanori Ichikawa, who's sort of like the current lead Saga producer, are they involved in this at all? Or are they, like, I was kind of curious, plainly speaking, it sort of felt like Saga Emerald Beyond, which I haven't played yet, I need to, was sort of like the Saga team game, and this kind of felt like just kind of like a side thing, even though it's arguably more interesting maybe. And I was just kind of curious about that. And what Mr. Tatsuke said was he was actually invited to join the Saga team from Ichikawa, who's like the Saga boss. And they decided to remake Saga 2 because it was basically 20 years ago they remade Saga 1, Romancing Saga 1 as Minstrel Song, and it got remastered. So this was, in a way, the next one that needed to get remade. But he was asked to join the team, and then he was pretty much given free rein to approach this how he wanted in terms of remaking this classic Saga game, which is, you know, I think that's cool and interesting. He's not really tied down to doing it a certain way or whatever. He said that the only like the main goal that he had from Ichikawa was we want this game to appeal as many people as possible. We want it to be an appealing game. I know you can maybe be cynical on how you might take to an answer like that, or if they're maybe diluting it or whatever, but they wanted this to be a game to sell Saga to everyone, because it is kind of a hard thing to sell. We've talked about this numerous times, trying to describe why Saga is so cool and so good, but it's always sort of hard to sell. And basically that's what Shinichi Tatsuke was sort of tasked with doing with this remake. And then he also said he did consult with Akitoshi Kawazu several times about like the Romancing Saga worldview, because obviously Kawazu created that, about, you know, characters and world. He just said the worldview, so I don't know specifically, but Kawazu was there for consultation. But Ichikawa basically said, sell this game to anyone, to make this game. I don't have the interview in front of me, but basically sell this game to as many people as you can, and basically bring that saga to a new audience. And you have free reign to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've heard just a lot of positive things from people who've been trying out the demo, just in general, including Cullen, obviously.
I know. Some Hayes Madsen, who writes for Inverse, who's also a big RPG fan, he said on Twitter when they saw these games at PAX, like you did, right?
Yeah.
Or no, it may not have been PAX, it might have just been the demo, but he basically said, kind of bluntly, this game wasn't on my radar, and then I tried it, and now it's like, damn, I want to play this. So that's kind of the whole goal, right?
it's kind of interesting because like a lot of like the tweaks that they made is just like kind of being more upfront about like how the more obscure things of Saga does, like in terms of like remembering weaknesses. Now you remember what an enemy's weakness is instead of like have to rely on your own memory or just knowing what skills are glimmerable, and just surfacing that. It's like okay, that's just really really smart subtle tweaks to it all. That like it doesn't remove the spirit of Saga. It just makes it a little bit more inviting by surfacing certain like obscure mechanics that Saga usually does. Like even Emerald Beyond, for example, it's like it's like what was the weakness of this enemy again? Depending on my answer, I might get wiped or not. So I hope my memory is right on the weakness of this enemy. You
Yep.
know.
I think
So
one of the things is that the game doesn't even tell you you're doing the weakness because there's no weak indicator back in the old games. It's just like, oh,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
just
so
does a
you
little
just
bit
have
more
to
damage.
recognize, oh, I'm doing more damage. Yeah.
yeah. So it's cool to see. Like I'm really really interested to see how successful this remake is gonna go. I cannot wait. It's so close. It's so close. It's
Mhm.
coming out October 24th. Just it's basically a month away. It's just crazy to think about.
And it's not the same time as Metaphor. It's like October's
Well,
pretty
Metaphor
stacked.
is earlier, but
Yeah.
it's basically like the same day as East 10 in the West.
Yep.
Yeah, this October is stacked.
Yeah, October is pretty crazy. It's you got Metaphor at the beginning of the month, and there have been reports that Metaphor is maybe not unexpected, but really long. And then you got a few weeks to do that, and then you have Romancing Saga and East 10. And then if you're someone like me who plays RPGs on both sides of the pond, you have Dragon Age a week
Yeah.
after. So
Yeah. Speaking of Dragon Age, Alex, our big boss, wrote up a preview for Dragon Age: The Veilguard on the site, primarily focusing on like its RPG systems, the very RPG system focused preview article. He went down. I forgot exactly where he went down.
San
He's like
Francisco.
went San Francisco, got hands on about 6 to 7 hours of the game. There's like a big preview media event for both media and influencers and so forth there, and they just basically were given free reign about like on certain like parts of Act One of that game. Um, just like they basically can't talk about like any story spoiler stuff, but anything else that they got to see, it's like go feel free to like go into what they saw. So for our site, Alex really talked about like the class selection, um, their skill trees, what they specialize in, tried to like drive them like, hey, there's actually some deep RPG mechanics in this next Dragon Age title, while he on his other job at VG 24/7 kind of a more general overview about like what fans can expect from Dragon Age, just surface level in general. And I've seen other previews, watched some other previews, and generally like people came away more optimistic about the game because a lot of people, like me included, felt really, 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 really turned off by the way they debuted this title over at the TG
Or
or
SGF.
Summer Games Fest.
And that,
SGF,
yeah,
sorry.
I was in that preview, and I think the very first thing I said about it in our chat room when I got back from it was very uncertain that debut was not good. It
Yes.
was not. Quick reminder. It was kind of like the tutorial level, really linear. You had like one skill, and it was very cinematic, and it's just kind of like okay, like very guided, very. It was just not a good demo. I mean,
Even but yeah, even to audiences, right? Like on the like the first time they showed that was like that really bad trailer of like showing off like the
oh yeah,
other members of the Veilguard that like was trying to like give off like a Marvel Cinematic Universe vibe
mhm.
to it. And then after that, they had like that whole 45-minute like going through the prologue, so it's like very stale
Yeah,
linear
that was what I
gameplay.
saw, like an
Yeah,
extended version of that, basically.
yeah, and it's like okay, it's kind of okay. I kind of see what they're going for, but it doesn't feel like they didn't show like really any RPG mechanics in that either. But but unlike with this preview event, people got really into like got really into deep like dialogue selection. What are the consequences of some dialogue choices? Checking out the skill trees. What can like the different classes do, and start getting a feel for like what a RPG build is like, and and when you're actually you know it playing through the game with the extended hands on with your own eyes and how it feels. Like is the decision to only be have your own character playable the right decision and like the others be you know you only select like commands Mass Effect style to them. And for the most part, people were like, "Yeah, I had to like I was juggling a lot of things already on my own. So if I had to like play the other characters, I feel like that would have been too much." Like I've definitely heard that sentiment from previews already, saying that like it's actually they actually kind of made the right decision with this. With their
That
with
actually reminds me of what I played of Greedfall 2 at
Mhm.
Summer Game Fest. Really quick, like Greedfall 1
Yeah,
is Mass Effect-ish, where you only control your character, and then your party members, you kind of set behaviors to them, and they act on their own. Whereas Greedfall 2 kind of goes the opposite route, and it's like now you control everyone, and that necessarily slows things down, being kind of
yeah,
this paused action kind of combat, which is not, it's just a different, different flavor of combat, really, but it's, that's the goal they're going for here is they don't want you control your character and your side and your little companions, your partner characters can do what they need to do without you having to micromanage them. It's the
mm,
goal anyway.
yeah. So I don't know. I mean, like it's I feel like this new Dragon Age still has like a long road ahead on like trying to win people's trust and goodwill. Obviously, because obviously BioWare hasn't had like the best track record before.
Uh,
Like
I
with
saw I
Mass
saw
Effect
an
Andromeda
amusing
and
comment on
Anthem.
Twitter about like they were like, I'm not really into Dragon Age, but when Dragon Age Inquisition came out, I kind of felt like, oh, it sold a lot, it reviewed well, people must love this game. And now it's kind of a weird like actually that game was shit kind of rebound.
Yeah,
Now I know that's
time hasn't treated that game well. Like as as time has gone on, that's like definitely public sentiment on that game. Like it feels it feels divisive. Like rather than like a landslide of like negativity, it's more like it's definitely just like one of those. It's like as people kind of dwelled on it, and it's like maybe it wasn't as great as I once remembered or as what I once thought. Now that I think
yeah.
of
Anyways, I've said this before in previous
yeah,
podcasts. I have not played most of the Dragon Age series. I played the original game. The plan was to catch up before Veilguard. That's probably not going to happen. Um, but it does feel like, and I'm definitely not the first person to say this, and this is not the first time I've said this. This kind of feels like Mass Effect 2 or 3 Dragon Age style,
yeah,
which those games are beloved, at least by certain people, not everyone, obviously. And kind of going into it, that's my expectation. So I'm hoping that I'm setting my expectations well, that it's not going to surprise me in terms of, oh, this game isn't what I hoped it would be. So, like, I'm not expecting this to be like Dragon Age Origins at all, which I really liked, but that is clearly more classic
yeah.
computer style RPG. So that's kind of like the way I'm approaching this is I'm trying to calibrate my expectations properly. This is the type of game they wanted to make. And that may or may not be for me, but I'm trying not to get caught off guard that it's something I wasn't expecting.
Right. Yeah, I just hope there's this like fun. I just hope the gameplay, there's the moment to moment gameplay is fun. There's fun builds to strive.
Yeah.
I don't really care at this point like where it's gonna go in terms of like story or like characters. Like I feel like that's something that the game will have to prove to me as I play through it. It's hard to say right now whether I'm like if I go into it like being pessimistic from the get go, it's like that doesn't really serve me in general. It's like I'll just go into it with no expectations. The only expectation I will have when I start playing the video game is hopefully I have a good time playing the video game. Uh, you know, um, but it's definitely a game that I want to play. If not for my own personal interest, then definitely for the like end of the year podcast where we talk about the games of the year. Potentially if this will be one of them or not, and I'd like to have an informed opinion on discussion at the very least. I try to do as much as I can, but I'm only one human being as well. So we'll see. That's coming out end of October, October 31st. So another late October release, as we mentioned here.
And a week after that is Mario and Luigi. Like,
God.
literally, it just doesn't stop. I mean, obviously, very different type of RPG, but I'm excited for that one too.
Yeah. Um, Scott wrote up his preview of Kingdom Come Deliverance II, what he saw at PAX. We both saw the same thing, just at different time slots. I kind of already mentioned my time with it. It seems to be, you know, the Warhorse Studios really going for it. They're trying to make the most ambitious, fucking immersive RPG ever, even more so than the first Kingdom Come Deliverance. That'll be great. So that's coming February next year.
I think I
And
said this when you talked about your PAX impressions. These,
mhm.
when I think of the original Kingdom Come Deliverance, what comes to mind first, besides just like the setting, is its quest design. It is like the opposite of Reynatis. Remember Reynatis, where like the quest design here is very open ended. It's not always, at least in the original game, just like go to this person and talk to do this thing. Like you have different choices in terms of how you approach a quest and different outcomes depending on what you do. I believe one of the quests you talked about, there's also an outcome if you like choose neither. And sometimes there's interlocking quests, and there's not always like an ideal ending. Now, when I played the original Kingdom Come Deliverance, it was pretty buggy pre-release, and some of these quest flags didn't work quite properly. Where I don't remember the exact details, but kind of expected things where it's like talk to this person to learn something, but then you talk to that person and they like don't even like the quest flag isn't there. Like you're supposed to talk to them, but the character doesn't do anything. Like it just doesn't work. So I'm hoping that that's tuned up for the sequel because that's one of the strongest things I think is like how do I put it? It's not just like a main story with dotted like mini quests here and there. A lot of that game's story is kind of told through these interlocking quests that are technically optional, but kind of shows the characters in the world. So
Yeah. So yeah,
that's next
so, yeah,
February.
just another February release next year.
February is filling up.
Again. And then you and Cullen collaborated just to kind of get your thoughts on the mobile and PC ports of Dragon Quest Monsters of Dark Prince. We talked about it a little bit already
Last
on the
week.
podcast.
Mhm.
Yeah, last week. So, any other final thoughts on that, or just like just read up
I
if you're
think so.
interested?
Yeah, I played quite a bit of it since last week's podcast. I think my general take on like not caring too much about the story is still valid. Like it very lightly touches into Dragon Quest IV, but it's really like I said last week. That's more just addressing to like this monster collecting RPG. Um, I do think it's definitely in the back half of the game has gotten more difficult,
Mhm.
where I have to be a little bit more careful about. Okay, I need a monster with these abilities to counter this boss, so I need to like, coordinate my team and do that, which is what I'd sort of hope for a game like this, where you have so much flexibility in your party. Um, I think I said last week, like I kind of had a party and I stuck with it, and I did, but in the later parts of the game, you do kind of have to counter a boss strategy with a strategy of your own. So that's always nice. I appreciate it.
Okay, so that'll wrap up what's got on for the feature of the site this week. It was kind of pretty active.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so now
Well,
moving on
before
to
we
the
go into
news.
news, it looks like Chow has to head out. He already did
Oh,
head out.
okay. Oh, okay. Bye, Chow. Yeah, he has to.
Actually,
He dipped already.
going forward, unless we change our time slot, this might be more normal because I believe he's got a new job, or actually, really not just a job, but a business that he's running on Saturdays. So
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll try to talk to Chow and see what's going on. I have to make some adjustments. We'll see. We don't know yet.
it's just me and you for our news
That's
section.
right. Uh-oh. It's okay. Not too much anyway. So the big thing this week, there was an RGG Summit event a few days ago, and right from the get-go, from minute one, they showed off a new Like a Dragon game. It is a spin-off title. It is called Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. It is coming to PlayStation 5, PS4, Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, and PC on February 28th, 2025. It is a spin-off title starring Majima as the sole main character, and he's a pirate in it. The the story setup is that Majima ends up gets shipwrecked on a remote island, and he forgot his name. Um, so he goes on a pirate adventure to try and recollect his memories, pretty much. Um, it's and also like based on the trailer, it happens like real like near the end or after Infinite Wealth, which is the latest mainline title. But obviously, since it's a spin-off title, you won't really need knowledge of Infinite Wealth. It's more like, you want to go fucking on a pirate adventure with Majima, then fucking go do it.
Wait, is this canon or is this just a what if?
No, there's canon.
Oh wow,
I'm pretty sure.
I was thinking it was just like a what if. Let's have fun with it kind of deal.
No, I think it's actually based on in the same
Okay.
world and
Okay.
continuation. It's like
So
yeah,
Majima getting lost on a Hawaiian island and losing his memory and becoming a pirate is literally what he does as part of his story. Okay.
yeah. I guess after you spoilers run into him and other characters at like some point in Infinite Wealth, maybe there's like what happens to him after that encounter. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe, but that's based on the trailer what they showed. This is like kind of make allusions to background events that happen in Infinite.
I kind of figured this would just be like a spin-off what if, not canon, but oh well, whatever.
So yeah, so it's cool that they have the platforms and they have a release date out from the get go. We got the little bit of premise out of the way. He meets a mysterious boy named Noah as well, and then a lot of this game it returns to the beat 'em up genre with some RPG progression mechanics that are obviously like a Dragon Gaiden recent release and like the older Yakuza games as well. So there's like two fighting styles that Majima has, his Mad Dog style, which is like his you know, kind of his Yakuza style where he's like his arm with a knife, can like cast summon shadow clones of himself, and he's very agile throughout it. That's his very typical Majima traditional style. For the first time in the series as well, you can jump in combat. So there's actually like air launchers he can do, and you can jump up and do air combos in the game, which is cool. That's awesome. And then his second fighting style is the Sea Dog fighting style, where it's like his pirate themed style, where he's like armed like dual short swords, and he has like various tools like sidearms. So he has like for some of his finishers of his dual sword strings, he can like bust out like a blunderbuss and like fire at an enemy. And there's like a flintlock pistol, um, a dynamite that he can like throw out. Um, so that looks fucking awesome. There's like a move where he can like throw his like short swords and like in a circle for like a cloud clearing move. So that looks insane, and that looks like a lot of fun. Um, they showed off some of the locales. So obviously they didn't just make the whole fucking Hawaiian region just for Infinite Wealth. They're reusing that region for
Right.
this game as well for Majima to run around in as well. There's also like two new locales. Like there's like this pirates den um and like a hideaway sort of thing, and like a pirate graveyard where it seems like it might be like the almost like the entertainment district is of that game. Um, some of the mini games that they showed off were Crazy Delivery from Infinite Wealth, Dragon Kart from Yakuza Like a Dragon, karaoke, um, and like the cosmetic customization you could do in the Man Who Erased His Name. So, but they said that's like it. The scope of it is very similar to like a Dragon Gaiden. It's not like a whole big 50, 60 plus hour RPG sort of thing. It's much more contained and uh you know sort of stuff. So I'm I'm excited. I mean, sure, why not? It looks like a lot of fun. I'm sold.
Yeah,
you,
it
you
seems like RGG Studio, I imagine, now that they have, I think practically all the games are on all platforms and whatnot now. Well, they just started porting to Switch, I guess. They got Kiwami coming out for Switch soonish
yeah,
here. But anyways, it seems like we're now at the point where simultaneous releases, everything's caught up, everything's been ported, because some of the earlier releases they came out for PlayStation first, and then Steam and whatnot, and Xbox was in there. But now it's like, okay, my guess is they're going to try to do like sort of maybe an off and on, like last, or I should say 2024 they had a mainline game in Infinite Wealth. Next year is going to be the spin-off game. I don't know if they can do like mainline spin-off, or that's too much. Like I don't, because it was about 4 years in between Like a Dragon and
yeah,
Infinite Wealth.
the scope of Infinite Wealth was like really massive. They're like so
So I'm
it
not
was
expecting Like a Dragon 9, right? Not 9 would be the next one, right?
Yes, yeah.
For probably a few years yet. So I wonder if they're going to do like this spin-off and then maybe like a prologue game to 9 and then 9 in like 2027 or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's also like maybe, and then also RGG Studio does other projects besides,
Oh, there was
like
news
there's a
about
Virtual
Judgment.
Fighter.
Did you see the Judgment thing?
Well, no, what happened?
There was a comment from, I believe, Kimutaku's wife. What's his real name?
Takayuki Yagami. No, that's the name of him. The likeness is Takia Kimura.
Oh yeah, that she said some comments that imply that there won't be any more Judgment games.
Oh, huh? that's
Here, let me see what my friend said
that's
about this.
that's kind of okay. That's I don't know, man. That doesn't feel good. That sucks if that's like real.
Okay. One
I
second.
like the Judgment games a lot. But I mean, but it's always been. It feels like it's always been a fucking mess because with like Takia Kimura is like he's so wrapped up in the so
Okay,
many fucking
so
restrictions.
this is an article from livedoor.com, news.livedoor.com, which is in Japanese, and they're reporting an issue of a magazine that basically said that Takiya Kimura may have turned down more Judgment games because his wife, I guess, isn't necessarily a fan of him being in those games. So I guess there could be another Judgment game, but it might have if it might have to do a different character. I'm not
That's
sure.
Man, that's tough. They have to do. I mean, it's not impossible. I mean, like the
Yeah,
Kaito is awesome,
yeah. Just have Kaito become the main character.
but that's
So
so awkward if that's real. Uh, it's hard. I mean, it's tough because like for a lot of people, including myself, like Yagami and by extension Kimura, is the face of Judgment, and like Kaito's like the awesome sidekick that got a cool fucking DLC. But
yeah.
it's just like I don't know. Good luck to
Now,
RGG Studio.
if
Good
this
luck.
if this news wasn't here, and this is more like gossipy, rumory stuff, but it's there, I would maybe think they could maybe do like a 3-year cadence of like spin-off Judgment mainline, spin-off Judgment. I mean, they've been sort of doing that, not so robotically, but something like
Yeah,
that to keep a persistent schedule. But who knows?
yeah.
For
Who
now,
knows?
Infinite Wealth just came out. I haven't played it yet. In fact, I haven't played any game in this series. I need to catch up. And then we got a
Um,
spin-off next year to look forward to.
yeah. It looks like a lot of fun. I definitely want to play it. And then I guess the future of Judgment is very unclear more than ever before. More than it already was, rather. So yeah, yeah. I'm very interested to just learn more and fucking play this. Looks like a really fun time. Um, yeah, that hit me out of nowhere, and I was like, gut.
Well, that news, we knew there was going to be an RPG Summit, so there were some rumors and murmurs about what the game could be. So it was. I don't think anyone expected Majima in Hawaii, but this
Apparently, there was
next,
like a 4chan leak. Did you see the fucking like someone referring to like the 4chan leak years ago? And like
yeah.
there's like a 4chan leak that pretty much accurately described what it was, but then everyone dismissed it because it sounded fucking fake. To be honest, it's like that sounds ridiculous. Do better with your fake leak or whatever, your fake info, and then it's like, oh, it was real. What the fuck?
But anyways, we
So
knew that there was going to be some Yakuza Like a Dragon related announcement. Now, this next piece of news literally came out of nowhere. Like,
oh yeah.
no one
Speaking of
expected
dims,
this.
yeah. So from developer Dims with the collaboration of Bandai Namco Entertainment, they have announced Freedom Wars Remastered for PS5, PS4, Switch, and PC via Steam, coming on January 10th, 2025. This is fucking crazy. For perspective, this is a Vita exclusive game that came out in 2014, and this is from Sony Computer Entertainment's now dead Japan studio. So Bandai Namco and basically had to get the license of Freedom Wars from Sony to work on the remaster of this. Um, and it's just one of those things. It's like you would think that that lineup from Japan studio, whether it's like Freedom Wars, Gravity Rush, Soul Sacrifice, and so forth. It just feels like that those pool of games feel like it felt like they were lost to time because they were under Sony. And it's like there's no way Sony's ever gonna revisit or revitalize these or do anything with these. So here comes Bandai Namco, fucking out of nowhere. Is like, guess what? We're like, what? Like we got Freedom Wars. We're like, you're what the fuck?
And also,
So
what was also kind of funny about this announcement, it was like a Japanese timed press release announcement. Like there was no stream event as far as I'm aware of or anything like that.
yeah,
It was just like in our time here in the States, it was like, I don't know, 8 p.m. that night because it was the morning in Japan, or just like surprise. And it's a worldwide launch, and the English outlets announced it also like at the same time, but it was like literally like 8 p.m. at night, just which is
yeah.
not usually when an announcement happens. Like, just surprise! There's a new
We're all just like having a
remaster.
dinner, we're just having a nice time, just relaxing, and all of a sudden, guess what? So this is awesome. So for people who don't know Freedom Wars, Freedom Wars is sort of in that era of like that handheld era of everyone trying to make their own Monster Hunter with their own
Yeah.
other ideas. So you had like the Tokiden, the God Eater, Soul Sacrifice, and so on. Freedom Wars was one of them, and its whole gimmick or its whole not its whole it's what its whole shtick to the Monster Hunter formula is that everyone has like basically grappling hooks. It's called like thorns, so people can like grapple onto something and like go to it and like attack different parts of the monsters like in a vertical fashion. Because like the game design can account for like people using the thorns to like travel vertically up a monster and like hit certain parts of it or use like the environment to their advantage. So it's not it's a game that's like definitely not for everyone, but for the people it definitely resonated with. It was definitely like such a cool concept as well. And then like the whole story is like you're like basically in prison. You're a sinner, and like you have this whole fucking crazy prison sentence. Um, that you have to reduce your prison sentence and fight your way, to get out of prison, pretty much. So that's a very awesome welcome surprise. Some of the new features in this remastered version is kind of what you expect. It's gonna be higher res textures, models, UI has
The original
supports.
game, I think, was Japanese voices only, and now it's going to have a dub also. Is that right?
Oh, awesome! Is that true? Yeah,
I think
I didn't
so.
see that. That's cool. Um, it supports 4K resolution. It has they added more difficulty level settings, and then they apparently overhauled the weapon crafting system. So I don't know like in what way, shape, or form necessarily. There's some previews and footage from Japanese outlets like 4Gamer and Famitsu that showed off some footage and talked to like some of the game development. They talked with Dims's Takashi Tsukamoto and Tetsunosuke Seki for more like insight on the remaster. Tsukamoto used to be the director of the original release, and he's now the development producer of this remaster. And the interesting thing is like Dims wants to actually make like a proper sequel to Freedom Wars, and
Yeah.
they received approval from Sony to release a remaster, and then Bandai Namco to publish it. So, logically speaking, if this remaster does well or hits their sales targets or whatever, obviously there'll be more incentive or more support to kind of make a proper case to like, hey, let's make a sequel to Freedom Wars. So they're hoping, obviously that the interest is there for the remaster. So that's
Did we mention that it comes out on January 10th? I don't know if we said that.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mentioned January 10th. Yes. And
So
hey,
January is kind of filling up. I
early
mean,
January is cool because
some
not a lot of games release in early January these days. So
yeah, I remember last year, obviously, or this year, I should say, Infinite Wealth, but that was like at the very end of
yeah.
January.
So I mean, I'm down for more Freedom Wars, especially on PC. So that was potentially the coolest out of nowhere news this this week. And more news. Dragon's Dogma 2 got a pretty substantial update. That after its release in late March this year, Capcom has been continually patching Dragon's Dogma 2, optimization updates, bug fixes, and so forth. But they released a new update that's now available that adds a new casual mode difficulty to the game. And this it's kind of a weird thing because like for people who already have played through Dragon's Dogma 2, what they want is the opposite. They want like a harder difficulty for the game. So there's been some pushback on this update that they went one way, not the other way of like where's the harder difficulty um setting pretty much. So in casual
Yeah,
mode,
on that note, just real quick, like
Yeah.
I remember I have played a lot of like games that are like Souls inspired, and those sorts of action RPGs, you always have to be really careful and like really about your stamina, about your health and whatnot. And when I first started playing Dragon's Dogma 2, I kind of was going in with that same mindset just because I got so used to that, and then kind of quickly realized, oh, this game is actually like very lenient, pretty easy. A lot of enemies, like especially just the normal enemies, are not threatening at all. So it's not a very hard game, and it gets really just easier as you get through the end. I mean, some of the bigger enemies are maybe slightly tricky, but it's not a hard game.
Yeah,
So
you can break the game wide
yeah,
open pretty easily, like break its
so
back. Yeah, I can see why people
mhm.
want a harder difficulty. But some of the features in casual mode that they added was reducing in fees and how much fairy stones cost.
They
They
finally added a fairy stone to Bakbatal.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's not part of casual mode, but that's just
Oh,
like but
I
that's
just
just
meant in this
a
update.
general. Yeah, in this update they finally added a port crystal to Backbatal.
Actually,
Um,
I think I had played through this game pre-release, and I remember talking with James, who also played it pre-release. He reviewed it. Like, where's the port crystal in Bakbatal? There's got to be one here, right? And it's like, nope, there is not.
yeah,
You have to
the,
set
the,
down
the
one of those random ones, which is, I guess, okay, but it just felt like there should be.
a very weird omission. Like it's like basically like it doesn't follow like the game logic that you've been kind of it's been taught to you up to
Yeah,
that
like
point.
generally
It's like
speaking, it sort of makes sense that like okay, the main hubs will have a warp point, and then you can set your own and move them around to other places that are of interest, right? Like I set one near the Sphinx and whatnot. But no, there's like this place you just kind of had to set one there. It's a little weird, but now you don't have to.
mhm. um, so yeah, so and then one of the casual mode updates I wish they just kind of applied universally was reduce stamina cost when dashing around out of combat. I kind of wish I was just like applied uh, universally and not just casual mode because that's like one of them. Like whenever people like play Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen on PC,
Just the
like one of the
mod.
mods, yeah, one of the mods people get it right away is like just infinite stamina when you're just out of combat, because you're not really getting the
It's not
additional.
cheating.
Yeah, it's just like you're just trying to get to one place or the other, like in a more efficient manner, and like just
You know that
reduce like
also
the
reminds me
downtime.
of for some reason. I know it's not the only game, but like I don't know why this came to mind.
Hmm.
Final Fantasy 15. I know Final Fantasy
Yeah,
15 also has
yeah.
like a stamina bar that you can dash for a few seconds and you have to jog a bit and then dash
Ah,
and then jog.
it's all so tiresome. Also, one of the casual mode features in Dragon's Dogma 2 is that it takes more weight to shift to the heavy and very heavy thresholds, so your characters can just generally carry more without having to suffer weight penalties um, as much. And then, like the Dragon's Plague disease, they won't cause a quote unquote devastating calamity on casual mode, even if it's reached the terminal stage. Which is, I guess, I mean, I don't really know who's clamoring for this, but I mean, it'll help some people, I guess,
I'm kind of
if
curious
it's all
about.
intimidated.
I sort of assumed that Dragon's Dogma 2 would get an expansion at some point. It just felt like Dragon's Dogma 1 did. A lot of mainline big title Capcom games get expansions or DLC of some sort. Um, but now that Itsuno is no longer at Capcom, it's a little weird, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, it kind of puts it in a weird state. I was thinking about that too. I was like, are they still gonna have an expansion for this with Itsuno gone? I have no idea. I don't know what the timetable, what the plans were looking like for this. So
Like they actually, I don't think they really have said anything about an expansion or even hinted at one. I just sort of
yeah,
assumed there'd be one, but now I'm
me
actually
too.
like a little less certain. Like I would still, if I bet, I would probably bet that there still would be some sort of content expansion, but I'm not as certain as I was. So
Yeah,
like maybe
yeah.
Dragon's Dogma 2 is just done. I mean, obviously, updates like this for fine tuning, but I don't know.
So moving on, after the announcement of the third and final Remnant II DLC last week. As usual, Gunfire Games usually follows up the following week with a closer look at the new archetype class for that DLC. And this week we got a closer look at the new Warden archetype for it. It's a very drone centric class. Players can choose between a shield drone, heal drone, or combat drone for the Warden's signature skill. And shield drone obviously grants a shield to an ally until they're 100% shields. Heal drone heals allies, but also not only does it heal them, it passively boosts relic use speed, which is handy. And then combat drone is, it'll help you attack enemies and so forth. So if you want more details on the new Remnant II Warden class, James put up a news post that goes more into detail about that, along with a video that properly reveals it. Kind of a weird. This was a weird news story. Gust and Koei Tecmo, to celebrate the series the fifth anniversary of the Secret series at Atelier, which is the Atelier Ryza games. Yeah, they celebrate its fifth anniversary. They gave all three of the Ryza games optimization patches and upgrades for it, and I guess some of the for like Ryza 1, they added in an autosave feature, option to fast forward certain things about it, like event scenes in the Fatal Drive, and option to autoplay text during scenes and so forth. For Ryza 2, they added a very easy difficulty along with those fast forward options and the autoplay speed, so forth. And Ryza 3, same thing. They added a very easy difficulty, added an option to fast forward some of the things, added a new landmark, which Kala's
I like this note. Change the completion requirements for Claudia's 3 Medicines character quest.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
It feels kind of specific, but I wonder if that's just something people were arguing about. Like, man, this quest is tedious, or whatever. Like, I'm assuming they made it easier. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But honestly, as a whole, like I appreciate this, that a company like Koei Tecmo, obviously Atelier Yumiya is the newest Atelier game, probably the biggest, most expensive one yet. But taking the time and the effort, and literally someone decided, like in a boardroom, like, hey, let's budget this much, this many resources to have our team go through these ports and make these tweaks and adjustments and in additions to these games, just for posterity, for the rest, for the future.
Yeah.
So like, I appreciate that it's not just set it and forget it, that they are, not just adding like a very easy difficulty or whatever, but like some of those quality of life features, like being able to fast forward, and like they also mention other small adjustments and tweaks and whatever. Like, I appreciate it.
It helps.
Like, I'm not an Atelier fan, and to be honest, I'm not that interested in the series. But it's nice to know, like, hey, if I ever try these, they're even better now. Hopefully, they didn't like mess it up. So
yeah, I mean, we didn't check up like what the follow up was, but as far as I know,
they're not Bethesda. I trust Koei Tecmo. That's not actually a good thing to say, but
I mean, that's gutsy because
some of their ports are not. Some of their ports need some more cute.
And Gus games usually don't launch in the best state. Gus games feel like they're fucking infamous for being really buggy at launch. Best of luck to Yumiya. Wuthering Waves version 1.3 brings a new region, the Black Shores, on September 29th, and introduces more characters to the game. Including the Shorekeeper and Yuhu. I don't know how to pronounce this character's name. I'm gonna pronounce it as Yuhu.
It looks like Yuhu.
So, I after PAX,
do you plan on catching up?
Honestly, I'm like caught up at the moment in terms of like content. Like, there's nothing for me to actually new to do in that game in terms of like if I go back on. I just need to claim the free 5-star and like kind of wrap up some quests, and then I'll be ready to go. It's just like because I had to do a lot of things in PAX, and after PAX I had like another thing that you tossed my way that'll take some weeks, So it's been hard to find some time to like really and motivation to like log on again to like fucking catch up. It's like I probably will, but man, because this since it's a big version update and it adds a new region, it's gonna like they already talked about like yeah, it's a big new region, so that means a new map to explore with a shitload of new collectibles that you have to go through. It's like fuck, man. Get around to it, I guess. Um, it's but I mean it's cool that like they continue to update the game and continue to support it, and they had even like an official live stream broadcast for it that had English subtitles, and just kind of laying out, hey, here's all the new stuff coming in this new version, all the new activities, new goodies, new codes, and so forth. So all the details are up on the site. And I don't know if I'll have time to get around to it. I should probably at least log on to use the codes because those are like those stupid FOMO codes that only last like 3 days. Like if you don't get this
I mean,
code,
if you, how does it work if you don't redeem these codes? Then what's the even point of ever playing again? You just missed out.
exactly, you're right. You bring up good points.
Maybe you'll be free of the
I
burden.
mean, I am free right now, but if I double click the icon on my desktop again, I'm locked in again. I'm back in Wuwa prison. They
Just
say.
click and drag that icon into the recycle bin. You'll be free.
But it'll still be installed on a
Yeah,
PC.
you go to Steam and it's right there.
It's not on.
It's a Steam game, right? Or no. It's Epic. That's right.
It's Epic, but it also has its own
It's
PC client
just
as well.
standalone thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I forgot that some of these games go on Epic, but not Steam. I think the Hoyoverse games are also on Epic. It's kind of weird.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I believe that's. But it's kind of like a weird thing because you're going through Epic for when you click play, it boots up the launcher. Yeah. So you might as well just get the launcher directly from their site and then not have to go through Epic. I mean, Steam is the same way with some of these games.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to let everyone know on Steam that you're playing a gacha broadcast. We talked about this game for a bit during its demo, but Cyberpunk Rhythm RPG Keylocker is now available. That recently launched on Steam. What was it? On the
Well, it launched
18th?
on everything basically.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, Keylocker available pretty much on everything.
This is from the Brazilian indie studio Munana, which previously released Virgo versus the Zodiac, which I've heard some good, maybe mixed, but mostly good things about. Keylocker also seems sort of mixed. I remember checking the Metacritic page just to kind of get an overview of it, and there's like a 90 score review next to a 47. Like, wow. I think that's interesting though. Just like people coming away from this game, very different takes on it. It is kind of a turn-based game with that sort of Mario and Luigi style action presses. And I know, I think from you and others have said, like, at least in the demo version, some of those action presses are kind of tedious and like way too precise to do them.
Yeah, and even people who are like seems to be from the Steam discussions, like there's still a lot of like complaints about the timing of it. Like for example, like it could be like it's visually like misleading, like where the timing of when you need to like press a button to like defend or attack properly. In that game is like before the flash. If you press it at the flash, you're already too late. For example.
Yeah.
So it's like a little bit before it. So it's just it seems like there seems to be like a lot of complaints on the Steam discussions about like the timings are just like they don't feel great in the game, which is my complaints when I was like playing the demo. It's like I can see like a cool game here, but like having these just like strictly timed actions for everything you need to do in combat, whether it's like any attack from any of your party members to all the enemies attacking you, and you have to do this thing every single time, just fucking sucked. Putting it bluntly, it is very tiresome. I don't know. I probably won't get around to it because I didn't have a fun time with the demo. 16-bit inspired RPG Flowstone Saga is coming out on September 26th for PC. It is from developer Impact Gameworks. It had a Kickstarter campaign in 2021 that raised more than $40,000.
Yeah, this is the team behind Tangle Deep, which I have heard of, but I'm not very familiar with. And So this is sort of like the sophomore project from this. I think this team started out as like a duo, and maybe have grown a little bit since then. I actually did not realize this game was releasing until a friend of mine who had actually backed the Kickstarter was like, finally, this game's coming out. Like, oh, I didn't realize this game was even a thing. Unfortunately, there's so many of these 16-bit inspired RPGs now that, like, I'm sure some of them are good, but it's so hard to tell at a glance that for these sorts of games, like, it looks neat. So this one's got a weird, like, Tetris style combat system. And when I say Tetris style, I'm almost wondering, like, are they allowed to do this?
Yeah, it's not legally. They think it's literally Tetris. Those are the Tetris blocks. There's a T-shaped block.
What are the Tetris things called? I forget.
Tetronymos.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But anyways, it's like you have like these Tetris blocks that you kind of like line up and attack using that. I guess when I look at a game like this, I'll wait for impressions, as with all these indie RPGs, see if it's anything special here. But like that part, I'm like concerned. Like, will this get old? Like, are you gonna do hundreds of fights with this? I don't know.
I love Tetris. Yeah, I have no idea.
But a lot of these indie RPGs sort of keep an eye on it and see if reception is good or not, I guess.
Disney Pixel RPG mobile game launching worldwide October 7th. This comes from Gung Ho Online Entertainment. This has surpassed over 600,000 pre-registrations. People like Disney, turns out.
Every time we post about this game, everyone makes the same joke. They're like, "It's not Kingdom Hearts, but it's close enough." Like, okay.
I wasn't gonna make a Kingdom Hearts joke, but it does have Donald Duck holding a bow and arrow in one of the screenshots. It's like, well,
I kind of like the pixel style. I'm not even like a big Disney fan or whatever, but I like pixel art, and some of the pixel art's kind of nice. Just seeing Disney characters in a pixel style.
But then you see the gameplay, and you're like, never mind.
I mean, mobile game like this, I don't much expect anything from the gameplay.
So that's coming out fairly soon. If you're interested, this is a kind of an interesting one. Originally developed by Vigil Games, and now through Gunfire Games, Darksiders II Deathinitive Edition is coming to PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S on October 15. And the YouTube account in the description for this video, the announcement video of this, explicitly says it's not in reference to the new untitled Darksiders project that was announced back in August during the THQ Nordic Digital Showcase. So this is not that project. This is just basically an enhanced port release for current gen consoles for PS5 and Xbox Series. It'll support 4K resolution, ray tracing, and enhanced lighting and shadows, and then it'll also support PS5's DualSense controller. They also emphasized in the press release that it'll have drastically improved loading times due to SSDs in the current generation of console hardware.
I'm kind of curious about this. It's just Darksiders 2?
Yes.
So, like, okay, so let's just say THQ Nordic has a new Darksiders game, Darksiders 4, coming out 2 or 3 years from now. I don't know. We're assuming that that's what the teaser is for. It may not be, but that's like what everyone hopes it is. Like the next Darksiders. And it would make sense to me, like, okay, a lot of these games you can play on PC, but if you're not a PC gamer and this game is coming out for PlayStation 5, like, let's get those games on PlayStation 5. Just like a new updated version of the game. But I would kind of expect it to be all of them, not just 2. Like Darksiders 3, I'm checking, is only on PlayStation 4, which I know you can play on PlayStation 5. And like Darksiders 1, I know that Darksiders 1 got a
War Mastered edition.
Yeah, I get them mixed up. And that one's got that's the PlayStation 4 version. It's the War Mastered edition. So like, why isn't that coming to PS5? It just kind of seems a little weird to me that it's just 2. not 1 or not 3? Like, are those coming later? I don't know.
I mean, I have no idea, but Darksiders 2 is definitely a favorite for a lot of people in the series because there's like less Zelda like the first one and more like Diablo-esque. There's like a lot of like rare loot rarity, a lot of like fast frenetic action because you're playing death. So it's just like a very fast, fluid action RPG.
I've kind of heard the opposite. I'm sure it depends on taste, where a lot of people
Yeah.
like the Zelda nature of the original, and people kind of lament that the other ones don't do that.
It's very divisive, yeah.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, some people really prefer this one. Some people really prefer the first one. Zelda.
No one
I kind
prefers
of
the
like
third
both.
one.
Yeah, yeah, because the third one's like it kind of goes Souls like ish in that respect.
It seems like the third one is just sort of okay. Like,
yeah,
I don't think it's. I know Brian reviewed it for us years ago, and seems like from what I've heard of it, it's not like a terrible game. It's just kind of underwhelming. So
yeah. So, but I kind of. I kind of respect the series in general, like the mainline games, for always trying to like at least do something different with the gameplay. Like it's always a different gameplay flow. One is Zelda, one is Diablo, one is more Souls. So it makes me wonder. It's like if there's a new mainline one, what it's gonna be like a lot. And then like I like how I think James mentioned it when we were talking about it, but like it's like hoping it's like more like Remnant. Like, that'd be fucking brilliant, actually. um, because like the last rider of the apocalypse they have to do is like the gun wielder, I believe. I don't know. This new re-release of Darksiders 2 Deathinitive Edition for PS5 and Xbox Series is going to be sold at $29.99 US dollars, so $30. But at those that pre-order it on PS5 by October 14 will receive a 50% discount. Um, the game on Xbox right now is at 50% off on until October 14, and then it supports smart delivery. So if you get that through Xbox right now, on Xbox One, you'll get the Xbox Series version immediately. Um, and then if you already have Darksiders 2 Definitive Edition on PS4 or Xbox One, you'll receive a free upgrade to their current gen. The new current gen version coming on October 15th. So, it's a pretty robust, release. Like, hey, if you already have this, it's already yours, sort of deal. So it's nice to see. We are gonna get a Western release for Touhou Spell Carnival on November 19th for PS5, PS4, and Nintendo Switch. This is the new Touhou RPG from Sting and
yeah,
Compile Heart.
Sting is back again.
That's right.
I always
And,
these
like,
Touhou games. I gotta remind myself what each one is. This is like the bullet hell tactical RPG.
Yeah, I believe so. I don't know if it's like a strategy RPG, I should say, but it's definitely like the SRPG plus bullet hell mechanics or some sort like that.
I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
It came out earlier this year in Japan, and Western release in November.
Well,
Chao will play it. No, he won't.
I haven't heard anything about it ever since it's released in Japan. But, there's definitely a market out for these Touhou games. Happy. And then lastly, since this is the episode before Tokyo Game Show, Kite has put up a pretty robust uh, list of expected RPG related streams and events coming to Tokyo Game Show 2024. Bandai Namco will be there, showing off Tales of Grace's F Remastered as expected. They'll also be showing off SAO Fractured Daydream. It's not as we said earlier, not really an RPG that fits under a scope. So the main focus for Bandai Namco there is going to be this Tales of Grace's F Remastered. Ubisoft will be there, showing off Assassin's Creed Shadows. They'll have a whole program with it over there. Microsoft will be there. We're assuming they're going to show off Metaphor V Fantasio once again before its release, since Microsoft has been spearheading the marketing for that. Got the marketing deal and campaign with Sega and Atlas for that, so that's why you have a lot of Metaphor V Fantasio videos on YouTube that says it's only for Xbox Series and Windows, because they got marketing deal for that. Level 5 will also be there, and this is an interesting one because they are showing off Fantasy Life I and Inazuma 11 Victory Road for there. But oddly enough, they are not. They haven't listed that the Deca Police nor Professor Layton and the New World of Steam will be there. So they showed off those other games like Deca Police last year, but not this year for Tokyo Game Show. It's only Fantasy Life I, Inazuma 11 Victory Road for this year's Tokyo Game Show. Of course, Capcom will be there at Tokyo Game Show showing off Monster Hunter Wilds. That is the big title that is especially for RPGs that is upcoming for them. They still have not announced the release date, so maybe they'll have a new trailer and maybe they'll show the release date, but we don't know. Hopefully they do. I mean, we do need a date for that. It's gonna be a very important date once they reveal that. And then Aniplex will be there at Tokyo Game Show, and they do have an RPG there. The 100-line Last Defense Academy.
Every time we mention this game, it's like, which one is this? There's Tribe 9, and then there's this one. This one is like
the SRPG, I believe.
Yeah, this one's more tactical. Yeah.
Also, moving on, Sega and Atlas, like I mentioned earlier, obviously they're going to be there showing off Metaphor Refantasio. It's going to be coming. Its release date is coming up soon, October 11th.
I mean, yeah, like I imagine the Metaphor like presence at Tokyo Game Show is going to be massive. I imagine.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is our huge RPG that we've been working on for years, and coming out within a month, like less than a few weeks. Yeah. So.
Also, they recently revealed Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. I believe they'll have it at Tokyo Game Show there, but I'm not sure it's going to be on the show floor or not, or it might be behind the scenes type of deal. Who knows? Koei Tecmo's going to be there with Fairy Tail 2 and Atelier Yumiya. So obviously you're going to have a lot of info about Yumiya and Fairy Tail 2 that they want to show off, because Fairy Tail 2 is December and Yumiya is early next year, I believe. I believe it's February. And then obviously they also have Atelier Rihanna. I cannot fucking pronounce that name ever. Which is their ongoing mobile game for the Atelier series. That's both in Japan and it's on Steam as well on mobile devices in the West. Square Enix obviously will be there, and they will be focusing their efforts around Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake. So that's coming up soon in November. Obviously they're gonna have more games like Fantasia, Neo Dimension, and Romancing Saga 2.
Yeah, they've already shared the trailer for Romancing Saga 2, which this happens sometimes where they just release the trailer ahead of time just to, there's the trailer update. And I'm sure they'll have a demo there, at least similar to either the public demo or the demo you played at PAX for attendees. So,
so yeah, so that they're focusing mainly on like the 3 upcoming games that they have yet to release. Obviously, Sony's gonna be there showing third-party partner titles, probably like Metaphor, Monster Hunter Wilds. They'll be there. And then the last on this list from Kite that on the site is from Nihon Falcom. They'll be releasing The Legend of Heroes Kai no Kiseki Japan very soon at the end of the month. So it'll actually be releasing like
during
Tokyo Game Show. So that is The Legend of Heroes Kai no Kiseki Farewell O Zamoria is the direct sequel to Trails Through Daybreak 2. So the next upcoming installment. Nice America doing fantastic work, just basically catching up to the series, because they'll have Trails Through Daybreak 2 sometime next year. I assume early next year. Then who knows when Kai no Kiseki will be coming out in the West? Like, fingers crossed, it's next year. But
hey, when did East 10 come out in Japan? Like last September? It was last year's game.
Yeah.
So we're getting East 10 barely 13 months late. Like, that's, I know relatively that's not good because most Japanese games are simultaneous now, but hey, that's better than it has been for Falcom. About a year. So if it's similar, it could get Kaino Kaseki in the West next October.
Yeah, because like we're assuming that the Falcom big release next year is not a Kiseki or East. It's gonna be like a new Xanadu.
Yeah, and that's of course in addition to the first.
Yeah,
which is just still a big like. It's still like, did that really happen? I guess it did.
I mean the first is so weird because like it's still a big question mark on all the developments that's like been going on since its like announcement in that Nintendo Direct, where like they had the Xseed script, except Xseed's not releasing the one responsible for releasing it. Nice America is not on it.
Apparently,
so
they told
responsible.
Salik Amatsu that they haven't decided on a publishing partner yet, or they don't know. I was like, how is this going to work?
Yeah, it's like Kondo just like made like some insane statements about it. It's like, yeah, we just I don't know, we're just kind of like winging it.
They also said there was an interview. I think it was with a Korean or maybe Taiwan or some outlet where he said like they didn't realize that it was in the Nintendo Direct. I don't know how much I actually believe that, but I think it's probably maybe more reasonable that they didn't know precisely when the Nintendo Direct was, not that it wasn't going to be in it. Anyways, that's supposedly coming out next year, and it sounds like it's simultaneous. So
I don't know. Yeah, Falcon really
who
needs
knows?
to, I guess, figure it out.
I imagine it's. If I had to guess, my guess is it might be like a simultaneous digital release. But if it's like a self-published thing, there might be some like, I don't know, limited run games or red art games or who knows, like some boutique physical release that's sometime later. Because I don't think Falcom has the capability to sell physical stuff in the West without a partner.
Yeah.
And who knows how that's going to work. So I don't know.
I don't know.
But yeah, Kaino Kaseki is coming out, and we might get it next year.
I wish I was a fly on the wall at that meeting of the Trails in the Sky, the first, or like the Falcom meeting of like how they're going to reveal it, and the Nintendo Direct, or like what the plans were at all for that. I need to be a fly on the wall and just like I need to understand the mindset of like what they were expecting going into this fucking thing.
I said this when it was shown. I imagine it'll be something like how Cygames works, where Cygames does in-house localization, and in-house localization means they outsource, freelance. They have certain people that they depend on for English localization, but they partner with Xseed and Marvelous for like distribution, which is important. Like Xseed didn't do the localization, but they handle everything in terms of like getting this game to stores and selling it. But I imagine Falcom has to partner with somebody, but I have
and Cygames is like infinitely more bigger than Falcom.
Yeah,
respects too.
Xseed is basically just like a foothold in the US to like, hey, we can help you get this game, a distributor basically.
Yeah. So I don't know, more developments on that to come. When Falcom is ready to share maybe more concrete details, or maybe there's like, I don't know, we'll say something, I guess.
But yeah, so like this year we had Trails Through Daybreak in June or July, and East 10 in October. So next year we could get Trails Through Daybreak 2 early, and then who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Trails Through Daybreak 2, the first, and Kaino Kaseki, like, if we're lucky.
It'd be insane to think about.
And then also, there's also that, it's probably the least interesting release, but there's also that Falgana re-release coming out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Falgana's a good game,
Yeah.
Arguably the best game out of those, everything that you mentioned from Falcon.
True.
So yeah, other like the thing I'm always excited about with Falcom coming to TGS is obviously the live mini concerts that the Falcom JDK band does. Those are always fun to listen to, at the very least. Always nice to like kind of see what the fantastic Falcom sound team is always up to. So yeah, that's gonna be hopefully not crazy busy for us, but you never know. There's always some announcements at TGS. Like TGS 2 years ago was the Suikoden remasters announced randomly.
I noticed that Kite doesn't have Konami on this list. Have they said anything?
I have no idea. Let me go check Gamatsu. Let's see if Sal has anything for Konami. Let's see.
Oh, I found their page.
Yeah, so there's Konami titles. Yeah, so
I'm looking. They have Metal Gear Solid, Snake Eater, Silent Hill 2 remake. That
yeah, they have the Suikoden
oh yeah,
there.
Suikoden's on there.
Yeah, Gensou Suikoden. So yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, they have a. 1
so
second.
yeah, Suikoden will be there in some, but it's one of those things that's like, hopefully we get like obviously we'll probably get a new trailer probably, and maybe some like gameplay footage, but we have a release date already for that, and we know what Suikoden 1 and 2 are. At least for us, we know what it is. So it's a fairly known quantity, which is exciting, but also we know what it is. Unless they throw another curveball at us out of nowhere. Like we're releasing 3, 4, and 5 as well.
That'd be crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, that wraps up our pre-Tokyo Game Show podcast episode. Um, Other than that, you can find us on the internet at rpgsite.net. You can find us on Twitter and socials at rpgsite. You can find us on youtube.com/rpgsite.net where we have these podcast episodes go up. You can find us on your favorite podcast app. Just search up Tetracast. You can go to our Discord, discord.gg/RPG site, where people talk about all sorts of stuff, like the the pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, and 13 Sentinels figurines, and more Yakuza. That's what I did from just briefly scrolling up the general chat. And a lot of talk there about just the general mobile games that people are playing. Probably the most active channel on the Discord. Um, And yeah, and then we'll catch you next week. We'll be in the middle of TGS. Adam will be out, Brian will be back. And then James will be out. So it'll be Brian, me, and Chow. And then Chow might have to leave prematurely because he's has other things going on in life at the
He has his
moment,
own business now.
right? So we'll have to work around with him and see. Um, nothing super certain yet on that stuff. So we'll keep you updated when we have more concrete plans around that. In terms of game releases this upcoming week, uh, I don't know. Let me go check.
Reynatis.
Kind yeah, oh yeah, Reynatis is coming out. Let's see here. September. Okay, da-da. We have Kaini Kiseki is coming out in Japan. I'll probably be watching my friend play that on his entire playthrough on Discord. That'll be fun. Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom is coming out as well. This upcoming week on the
That
26th.
that game is already leaked, and I know several people who are playing it because they just can't wait.
Well,
I mean, they're free to do
congratulations to
that.
them. Hmm. Just don't rat them out on Nintendo. Nintendo will
Yeah.
annihilate them.
Hopefully our Nintendo contacts aren't listening to this where I say they're free to do that.
I mean, you said it, not me. Um, I in Reynatis. Not this week, but the week after is the Starfield. Well, on the 30th. So yeah, there'll be. I don't know what I'm gonna be doing this week or playing, but I know what I'm gonna be playing. I don't know what I'm gonna talk about next week. Rather. So we'll see. We'll see. Until next time, we'll see you in 2 weeks, Adam. Um, on the podcast. Until then, enjoy your break from the podcast. I'll be here in the mines as I always do. And yeah, peace out, people. Stay safe. Take care.
Bye.